guard the door. Yeah.
Sick.
You gotta read the whole title.
I like it.
It's my excuse to be verbose.
Well, you can't say you didn't know.
We all know what this day to be about.
Is it the email set up?
Yeah, you should be on it.
I think they still have my wrong email.
Yeah, they haven't been putting the R in your email. I'll add it too.
Jesus. Okay, I can just email it again.
Yeah, so they just left out the R in between my first and last
Yeah,
name.
okay. I had your email given that we debate.
Yeah, so given we debate every
So
first debate of day 2, every turn.
Alright, I just sent it again.
You have a delay.
I do. Yep. Everybody hates on that, but it's totally reasonable. See, if Pauline had a delay, she wouldn't have sent out one R. So
No,
one
yeah,
C last
there's
turn.
like been 10 times in
I
NDT
like
prep
bullied
where
the other team into not opening.
It's so
We
funny.
still want to debate. Like,
It's fine.
it's fine.
Alright, got it.
Alright. Everybody good?
Yeah.
Advance was the ACA 2 internal links versus ensure exits the ACH clap now premiums price for coming hill took 31 premiums in the market high by 18.2% 20 and Texas North Dakota Alabama Nebraska so increasing 20% million including the attack for sure that healthy rules actually ensure by necessity rains down the property rating the markets this will lead to ensure exits exchanges are profitable now insurers are still facing losses the minimum of 318 for future looks free the main reason for increased probability is high premiums favors number tells pays to struggle of 29 pence against more than 90% premiums for the outside actually one of the facing cash premiums increasing insurance consolidation trusting locks in premiums price no quality benefits or cost savings actually 15 lower price benefits only they are passed through the visual of offsetting the hard with the lower price of losing quantity of investors to cause improvement markets come consolidate the best of the levels and customer best research the premiums increase to be more house now pass on to insurance that the merger has survived there's no emphasis company force offset down insurance less from with keeping market share consolidations increasing new waves of mergers are coming now the Monica 3A get ready for that wave of massive deals and the time will improve the insurance companies have been forced away to express the CBAs and have a better chance of improving their vertical mergers healthcare contributing out to natural hospitals small handful of commerce expensive more companies come to the urge to merge insurers bailing due to risky pools causes hospital deaths of skyrocket silver 17 years hospital exhibit insurance running 30 increase then down from hospitals bad that was covered patients drug coverage will groups and continue to not calculation has also sick individual in this virtual population is never in many parts of the house highly scholar system dominates with limited competition that's sufficient to cause a recession Richter 17 or such have a broken by brain trigger recession has the biggest percent of recession actual causes of natural economy has to do with that and eventually higher interest rate barn cause rising cycle the investigation from the death of the level of forces the next down from the moment Canada is the debt healthcare sector nuclear war Tonneson and 1500 independent cost of nuclear increase military confidence the leadership turbine nuclear arms should happen probably the great more complicated new terms like that from Morgan and great powers like the plan stabilize the ACA benefits private insured by migrating sicker people to the public plan Ackerman 17 like an option significant pairs the ACA ability to keep premiums low down payable sicker people escape them and increasing premiums the head and stuff that will my lower premiums like your health people interest rates come no use of subset sicker people so let the market culture to what people guys consider the option only the plans solve short-term and structural weaknesses on the exchanges Rooster 16 AC extinction favors other managers to drop out any payers are going to their losses and exchange increase when more and more payers dropping out of premiums only to increase the competition decreasing the competition would be to cause improved service of investing improvements to public option on the exchange of this will offer for helps with boosting competition and public option to some similar corporations the ACA offers systems with these exchanges second is consumer protection the plan's key to effective consumer protection on the ACA exchanges suits fail and private insurers dodge regulation now Baltimore 9 the big assessment in health care contract paper private insurance against insurance take your home single part of the insurance by class accessible elements of transfer insurance file regulation the harm is substantial no interest a record the agreed to pass the for public plan will disrupt the cost left down insurance public plan will set a model to protect insurance able to beat down the protection market like the covered insurance meet centers a bunch of the plan driver of the market becomes a system insurance has friends and reserves a public plan best market on call services and consumer protection violations by insurers unfairly deny more expensive but more effective treatment through step therapy while in 17 health certified consumer protection laws and federal covers step therapy with our patients fail nominated prescribed drugs provision accident medication prescribed them very part of all the covers leading system will carry the insurance clinical purposes and assessments to prescribe certain treatments creating an conflict of interest shifting away from step therapy causes a shift to precision medicine is the exact opposite of fail first where patients are given lower cost suboptimal treatments but first before more precise and effective drugs Goldberg and 15 Obamacare summary pyramid scheme and pathway more possible people get medicine be failing first or super cover your like environmental bills precision medicine save money by living use of treatment alternate or precision medicine work to place step theory and force patients pay high price most effective medicine precision medicine causes knock-on application that solves species extinction are internally specific ripples through the ecosystem and escapes local extinctions Marindale 17 novel approach required to combat epigenetic events application precision medicine wealth and species conservation improve by using precision medicine to novel treatments and manufacture strategies the restore population level while having the degradation by pollution or contribute to severely affected disease by the population to the global system with highly endangered species have need of effective disease dramatic knockoff effects of the elastic species and imprinting wildlife disease are important for the ramifications of species decline on the wider biome extinction. Schultz in 16 with habitats have negative extinction of the other species contribution of carbon dioxide levels in complex ways ecosystem and never be created. This support the preservation of the ecosystem. We don't have no support of the ecosystem for our survival. We easily produce our own system by eliminating parts of the ecosystem for essence for us. Advantage 2 is global health governance. The HCA expanded coverage but failed to achieve the universality that the right to health requires. Christopher in 15 right to health not use right to health with the base surrounding the HCA. All the HCA expand access to it falls short of goals by the right to health is often avoided discussion about the healthcare in the US and it goes down now the HCA the right to health is human rights never said make guarantee access to healthcare neglecting base surrounds of the right to health increase the falls for certain improvements when right to health use for universal health care nearly all members of the nation of the OECD health and fundamental cost by not condition of income disability status or other similar criteria in the plan gets the US on board with international right to health standards. It's reinvigorates the legitimacy of international health governance and promotes international health justice. Harmon in 15 global health justice and safe right Catholic rights by forging their rights success particularly by the achievable and affordable health and contributed within the multiple international interest by health and short half of the right minimum health care with the right health care bears health characters of defense provided by standard health care framers to achieve health justice the legitimacy governability for those more imperative safety right to health care systems emphasize its centrality and whether we use right to serve to international law and resisting great barriers to international health justice will be elusive etc. institutions inherit the same customs domestically. They do domestically use leadership is vital. Jumps out international progress. Kinney in 70 right to health actually accepts the principle of right health being said by right health insurance difficulties being like health without code by pesticides USB uniform system of right health users leadership really needed for parts of 3 we're building system of right health information change dynamics health loss making international level solves global pandemics empirics group anything less than human rights approach is insufficient. Sparrow in 16 anything based with use that demonstrated better health I also codified by means form native now for below to no recommendation certainty right to seek health care hours of infectious disease or animal virus or animal tubes and spread the tools very business very spend on costs and investment by health reasons taking place in the markers both country for international by ways of Serbia rather than local legitimate global health building revealing more authority requires right to health extinction defense is wrong milled in 17 pandemic resulted in human extinction instead of worldwide it's a trade-off of arguments do not have the possibility of the record instances going to state disease also examples of human population being wiped out especially when multiple diseases were introduced diseases he's been 100% fatality other diseases to every community worldwide that advanced myelocrazy diseases that combine such rates incredible right to health regime solves conflict escalation by creating treaty obligations promotes global peace. Mueller in 14 obligations point to human rights health conversations and common means anticipate whether there's system likely to average international confidence access to answer the easy rights to keeping peace on obligations of health seem more relevant than the situation where a state considers very research from healthcare the health conflict we often had to reduce conflict web seems to be more expensive on coverage and potential to resource for health ICS and our system such as version of carbon that can contribute to solving sensitive interface or non-state arguments no should maybe be a low cost of option promotes global right to health to check nationalist populism Friedman 17 need to leadership on human rights global health and how human rights and the compressing rational national populism gain momentum to see the ways where institutions are serving presenting health challenges to the universal health offer some hope to the lessening investment and democratic resistance and leadership right to health details the opportunities we have as the gravitas ability to carve through the health care land the way the different global health norms we both serve the goals already demonstrating the nature of the resistance of major national populism and to combat the worst right health on the corporate that to avoid extinction to all 16 we are unpicking little ways that was aboard the global world like strangling liberals and bold middle powers and intervention powers to defend nuclear weapons and reactionary populism resulting war democracy trade wars territorial squeeze of the multi-common ways to negotiation populism cosmopolitan liberalism Russia China Turkey bring themselves somebody that war when they fall in person maintaining public goods including the future of the planet remain evergreen global health governance key to East Asian stability Caballero Anthony and finds the outbreak of sensitive bases again trade missions running stars and made a country where they're one of the and one approach to bring different actors to cope with the most unfortunate building an regime this is for health disaster burning HIV malaria falling overwhelming legal South Asia instability escalates in Asia Austin 17 how well leadership with the problems maybe the most important country of the future the Indo-Pacific Asia who possible may becoming a future hold the metal regime diffuse senses home by base running spread by the invading neighbor country the and states where we democracy the political regime can be sure the influence of how powerful the grow.
I can probably another card or two.
The United States government should establish a public health insurance plan available on affordable care exchanges in the United States consistent with the international right to health care obligation solvency. Establishing a right to health care provides a narrow frame for satisfying right to health obligation. This definition solves stability and enforceability as well lose away in 13 language international arguments have been found about health and big resolution feature right to health care as well by some jurisdictions will clarify the target they require just to be able to educate on a clear concept of the right to health is human right. We require demonstrating that they can use narrow daily right to health care and answer the question of having to be alternative having health care preferable. The concept is more realistic and more inclusive and common right to health food to safe environment these have their own organization while they're likely to direction health care they are not one clarification resulting States to deal with the public options key satisfies commitments to a right to health under international law by checking disparities in access guaranteed by private markets. Gorin intent and general commitment requires it to uphold health accessibility use clearly breaches obligations general comment 14 NCIL and general unfair to be able for medical necessity for subject to universal health use create public options in order to use public right to health medication could be accessible to public options crucial addressing online problems they create unequal access to options could be between church and unfavorable practices Congress to public options to bring use in line with international law.
Okay, give me a second.
Sure. No, all causes of global health governance, including Trump. Lancet 17, Trump getting a few goes by his just not health governance and not mental health issues, public engagement, business practice, consider existing strength of barriers, admirable nor health security, give Trump and other things make business more intense, focusing on global health are seeing practical.
Okay, cool. I think that's fine. I'm gonna send this out.
You ready, Chris?
Yeah, I'm good if you're ready.
So, states value national security above everything else.
I don't know what you got that
Why
from.
would normative posturing on the international right to health change their national security postures?
Okay, Mearsheimer, our argument is that states don't always immediately care about national security above everything else.
Well,
they care
I mean,
about reputational concerns
I
and
mean,
international
Russia's
agreements.
cyber hacking our elections, they invaded the Ukraine, China's
Yeah,
had
fine.
aggressive
Our
posturing
argument
in
is
South
that,
China Sea.
so
I
number
mean,
one is a lot of our impacts are dependent on Russia. Number two is that we can win that the U.S. has an international normative effect, which causes other countries to bandwagon with the United States.
Do you have
and forces
any
Russia to
observational
comply.
data that proves that any country's security calculus has changed because of health considerations?
Yeah, the
That's-
Mueller card.
Well, also, like,
No, that card does not cite any data. I read it 3
There-
times
there-
before this debate. Where do you think it cites an example of
that,
one country?
yeah, okay, so if you let me answer your question, that ignores our argument, which is that these norms aren't effective right now because big countries like the US are not getting on board. We assume the kind of errors that exist in norms frameworks, for example, that big countries have outsized influence by the US declaring a right to health that corrects and makes those norms effective.
Okay, can you explain to me the theoretical decision calculus that would change a country's national security posture if there was a right to health?
In the context of which impact? Because I would explain this slightly differently.
The East
depending
Asian
on which
one.
So
Why
the
would-
East Asian one is about public health being a driver of instability in those countries. Our argument is that if there is international investment and cooperation on solving public health crises in East
But
Asia,
why wouldn't
it's
there already
less
be
likely
that
for
cooperation
diseases
now?
and
So
public-
your card is like there's going to be malaria or a TB outbreak.
Yeah,
that happens
says
now.
multilateral
Obviously, all the
cooperation
countries in
necessary
the
to deal
region
with that.
have an incentive to cooperate.
Of course they
whether
have an
there's a
incentive
right
to, but they don't
health or
have
not.
the capability to because they don't have international cooperation
Whoa,
to assist
whoa.
them with monitoring, surveillance, and investment.
So
Or actually
your
quite
argument
good.
is the right to health means they get resources from who? The WHO?
Yeah, that's one example.
So like China, who has one of the biggest economies in the world, cannot fund and bankroll
It's not just about
surveillance.
China.
And well, you read an East Asian. And
Yes,
obviously
China's
that would
not
affect
the
China.
only country in East Asia.
Okay, but they are one of them, and
They
your
are.
evidence says they'd be affected. Obviously, they have the money and resources to bankroll those things. What is your right
Our
to health
argument is
keyword?
that China will suffer knock-on effects if there's instability elsewhere in East Asia. That evidence says that.
Right,
China
but
would
you
likely
just
be
said
drawn
they have an
into a
incentive to
conflict.
cooperate if there's diseases in the region. I'm
I
asking
said
why a
that
right to health needs
international,
to
that
exist for that to
multilateral
happen.
cooperation is the key internal link to the capability to do that cooperation.
And your warrant for capability was the resources thing. Is there another one? Because I want to answer this in 2 hours.
I'm just going in circles.
I,
Like the resources.
This
Yeah,
is
I mean, there are
important. 'cause
resources. Yes, it's a resources argument.
Okay. The ACA advantage. Why is the ACA going to collapse the economy now?
Our evidence says that premium spikes are coming, which causes insurers to
Okay,
leave
so
the
there's
markets I
sorry,
didn't finish.
sorry. There's 5.6 billion people that are, or million, sorry,
Yep, billion.
a million people on the individual marketplace. Why would
They're
that cause
disproportionately sick.
Okay, but that's a less than 5% of the total amount of people that insurance companies cover. Why would that collapse the economy?
Our evidence says that hospitals have leveraged themselves to the individual exchanges. If hospitals don't reimburse them for example, uncompensated care based on people who are uninsured, then it means that those hospitals suffer high debt.
It's 6, advantage 1, advantage 2.
Yeah, I did. Just email them.
Everyone have it?
6 ACA health.
Yep.
Let me just grab this. Sorry.
Did you open it? I guess you don't need it really, huh?
Okay, cool.
Topicality, NHI requires directly covering all citizens of the NHI policy classifies healthcare system within NHS, SHI, NHI, and liberal, and SHI service provision limits only to the insured in the NHI. The state centrally administers health and financing don't cover all citizens of liberal. The role of the state is limited to marginal segment of the population. Those text explain each country's health system in terms of provision and financing NHI risk is first in the entire nation of specialized public corporate is responsible for healthcare financing in NHI and SHI. Multiple insurers and insurer while in liberal the states and many private health insurers control financing in NHI. The state is responsible for British century health financing covering the total population directly. They just increase access to insurance, which explodes limits because anything can increase access, which makes negative research and clash of possible skills negative ground because they don't have to make big changes from the status quo. The state's counterpoint, the 50 states should enact an interstate compact to establish a public health insurance plan available on Affordable Care Act. Exchanges in the United States consistent with international right to healthcare obligations and implement state constitutional duties to ensure health consistent with international right to healthcare obligations. Interstate compacts allow uniform coordinated action across the states and prevents preemption. State Jack 117 multi-state healthcare compacts to be enacted nationwide due to California's research population. The joint compact can brief economy scale state because this has a role in full of bargaining power. Compacts allow consistency laws by coordinating states. Could create new systems which over 200 active compacts to international agencies. Not compacts have authority to generate rule and regulate revenue engage in rulemaking states. Regulatory agreements on lawmakers approval. Supreme Court supported the correctional approvals not necessary. Congress releases those states. It's dangerous politically not to protect the will of the states. Healthcare states should be operable. All lawmakers stand on the holding the U.S. They might need to get correctional approval. The midterms said the dim wave is coming. Rothenberg in 320. Dems are likely to win. The House of Wave has already formed terms. Approval is settled in between 39 and 42. Turn Eric Chester Dems have a 9-point advantage. Changes picture for the party down election. Results of Virginia, Pennsylvania, and other special elections show that Dems said Danish turn out Clinton 1 Virginia by 5 North of Biden. Trump carries 1 to 22 Conrad. Even with Wisconsin, Trump carried by 17 to win. 10 points for Hunter swing against Trump. It's all about Trump's behavior. The murders of Republicans to the president change the trajectory. If they don't, the House will put Trump take credit for the plan. Seems the election market at 17. Trump understood the Republican voter well enough to discard party authority to still win. Most Republicans care less about shutting entitlement. Trump will have to be leagued to party by bolstering up against his party majority. We already know there's no overlap of people who vote for Senator Trump. Trump could back up Obama trial. Obamacare could become Trump care. Trump knows something about marketing, but Trump has party little authority, less working class Americans who won't punish make the government more generous. Trump unpopularity in Democratic House causes removal of French. In 18, when it comes to future public opinion matters, so future will not turn on the law to combination of corruption, opposition party control, and liberal driver president now alternating what these Democrats states 2 of the 3 compared to short periodically close. If popularity decides that Democrats say about the housekeeping fix it, but Trump could change the narrative and focus on policies. Trump erodes global deterrence, nuclear war, Fisher, and some of the deterrence based on by the U.S. is erode the threshold for using nuclear weapons will fall, nuclearization of East Asia, or the Gulf Coast of Trump, powers fire and fury, not rationality of war, could be the conversation with China, American security guarantee would no longer be airtight, and would pressure South Korea and Japan develop their nuclear capacity. They could easily, the last thing they should have highly inflammatory cocktail much will depend on Trump. Have tried to be unstable and ineffective. The U.S. can no longer be handled with left vacuum, nuclear roll up another nuclear deterrence. The U.S. imposes sanctions around Iran could have been a deal. It would trigger any further crisis of war today. Nuclear threats demand the opposite of fire and fury. The court's counterpoint, the United States Supreme Court should rule that the international right to health is a binding obligation on national health policy. It competes because it does not mandate the plan, but empirical evidence demonstrates public financing is the most likely compliance mechanism to the counterpoint. Rudiger and international norms set parameters of the RTH UN outlines all care should be made accessible and of sufficient quality pounds of force. Individuals with insurance market eyes, consumers reduce shared responsibility, market-based principles fail to meet standards so far as access must be universal, affordable, and comprehensive right to guidance set out parameters for universal equitable access, universal pricing care. This financing would include efforts to avoid separating people with insurance pay, respect carers invest in achieved through public competence administration, although once a lot of possibility of public private systems over when empirical evidence that governments have been unable to fill their obligation against private insurance companies writing the right to health. Private financing has led to inequities. Judicial leadership on international norms is key to the global U.S. alliance structure and international rights. Only the counterpoint toss advantage to NASA 117 underpinning American power globally goes beyond rights allies in Europe, Asia, and also want the protection of Washington because they understand that they want the United States to uphold international norms. The United States can only be trusted to be ruled out. Others have said the same. Trump's comments about dismissing international instruments compound the problem in rules, and therefore supposed to be stronger than any head of state rule. Blow is designed precisely to deal with Trump for now. Trump's maintained the TPA just said Trump's relationship with the GOP is key to keep TPA political, and 3-5 Republicans could block TPA in extraordinary shock. The Republicans voted to give Obama such a power taking from Trump would be risky. However, the Hill GOP White House relationship fast. That's premature. There's a political commander reference to now among Republicans to avoid and have a clash between the GOP and the White House. The plan upsets congressional Republicans. Bacon and some congressional Republicans hell bent on pushing a bill to replace the AC Congress's website. Republican Republicans Congress need to do what we told our constituents we would. Revoking the TPA causes Trump to withdraw from NAFTA, WSJ, and 3-9 to connect negotiations on NAFTA. Trump's relying on TPA set to renew automatically in July. Following his don't pass a resolution cancel House States. Single them like to draft resolutions so they convert the president from the party for negotiation. Such move could box Trump and make it more likely to fall through threats to withdraw from NAFTA. NAFTA withdrawal causes trade war with Mexico, insecurity cooperation, and crushes USA ad green. Attempting NAFTA enabled the U.S. to pursue security issues. Mexico has been over the collaboration of security issues. This could be undone by recall NAFTA could create a reaction to Mexican politics by making Mexico less amenable to cooperation. Trade moves against Mexico snowball into a trade war. Industries like agriculture is currently exposed because of their defense on Mexico. Security operation is key to combat cartels. Nuclear conflict Mets 2014, Mexico cartels expanded their operation beside the U.S. Trans-Pacific southbound. This could move to our terrorism, data connections, the Hezbollah base of collaboration, narco trafficking, made out of something the Hezbollah is a proxy around to strike the U.S. and retribution, pulling narco trafficking and transactional policy where this no longer the relationship begins to the great Trans-Pacific South. The U.S. would have to demonstrate action. The U.S. president would face immense political pressure to strike on to would encourage Mexican cartels to believe they could death with impunity using the U.S. military could cause collapse in security cooperation. Every strict option would be disastrous as collapse causes nuclear war. FDI and 12 conference will announce like the report over food if you are hungry. They say it's not well wars alive and follow federal so for 103 is research conflicts so likely to go to war research where food security issue more likely to resolve conflict UK ministry CIA CSIS also kids in research that you all identify as trigger for nuclear war innovation DA it's strong now Epstein in $17 shifted to targeted treatment of which are rate to change elections you know innovation all side best to hope you able to return money drop so with the division longer to solve the pressure on the job are in detail therapies are national opportunities to plan discourages in capital investments kills innovation compared to it's around the world of medical government control system poverty severe lack of capital in the US for adopting government model that would discourage governments making their system best to develop next gen products gene editing is key to space call Loria and 16 is truly possible for us to survive in the universe will need new biotech to transform microbes to use genetic to create sustainable food medicine if you were not ready for life on our planet astronauts space loss abundant too much atrophy we'd be bombarded radiation tools like CRISPR transfer DNA we can save would survive in space extinction ever extinction is coming asteroid change around air filter rising temperature events we cannot escape asteroid which charge people have no back up 5 weeks events have occurred do for another West find a way to multiple awareness to save humanity we have to do two things travel there and survive the ACA advantage no impact on cloud clarity 50 days to 90% survival attacks like terminating hunters peace world federal charge tries to lead to austerity which defense this could lead to third inflation will lead south play the protects vulnerable crisis if they increase benefit cooperation leadership aid and investment the church based our attention reduce tons of causes to habitat destruction like deforestation warming and etc no biology impact area at all and 12 cultures struggle to save the fragility nations essentially single piece of loss whole list of collapse data this has more fragile nation this finish one species not lead to issue of others to the minds of species keeping a consequence 240 sites flying nature disturbances such as deforestation mining oil spills pollution the abundance of species as well as ecosystem function return to 72% of the size nature servers so it can recover rapidly from the most powerful disturbances ACA is stable Sheen and why Tuesday despite the tone of the AC marketplace would be stabilizing AM nodes the world's most authoritative insurance and program source believes that these 2018 will be stable this agency this month changes out cost trends were flat regulators a lot of funds and just rates assures have overall been able to have to design specs to do integration market condition over the next year it doesn't collapse the economy Graham it's the criticism show the system is too expensive burden on economy is not clear they better give it a very high national income compared to larger developed country Americans have a higher income per capita after subtracting healthcare spending the US outperform all developed countries with respect to economic growth and share of GDP allocated healthcare has tripled their said no impact on the US economy deliver high GDP per capita Squosoft precision medicine hall and 3 research out the resources they need to cross off by mitigating and tackle unsolved problems patient and health consumers are particularly participating in precision research by volunteering to share their information current technology makes it possible for individuals to monitor their own health and to share that data easily with health-based applications it makes no sense for precision medicine on humans to spill over to habitat destruction the second advantage Disease impact is fake news of Delta, and 60 with each outbreak comes a period of siege outbreak of evolutionary our human traits are resilient. So what would take for disease wiped out humanity outside of fiction in real life like a real siege level is unlikely to popular fact would need to possess two attributes first. Whatever someone's unfamiliar that no existing already people would need to have a high transmissibility before symptoms occur. The first is essential because a microbe would have family which would allow disease spread without being detected. 3 infectious is most likely to consider extinction level. Don't meet the requirements influences and no humans with issue diverse HIV similarly limited Ebola falls short of no disease falls short of what seems to require no wipe out. You may have heard of revolution heritage our immune system you have the vaccine system you know species looking at total in the end we come to genetic variations, you have to even ensures that almost any infectious with a large portion of the population will have no extinction, burnout, and variation. Solved Gord. In 14 disease outside of species disease likely the population drops because less likely the individual contact each other highly continuous persons and out of the way the main reason variation supposed will be last year. Risks of pathogens will be less fully even though with infected individuals whose populism is high and there's all causes group factor. It's pretty population construction is not a matter of explaining specifically such as victories that making explanation what's called a good variety of continuous contact will also hope maybe President Le Pen Francis prepared by structural transparency would have civilly spent opportunities weaken a party's opportunities media generic communist party mission leader loyalty have funded and encourage competition to build people's home mediatization of politics encourage populist communication, hypersimplification, immigration. The U.S. priorities seeking for states and democratic efforts impose policy on top and outside of national policy. The instability scenario makes no sense. As far as cooperation, Peterson notes, states are likely to have conflict with states over health-related foreign policy disease. Members is likely to have such conflicts over states weakened by disease, responding to protection any disease, may facilitate national cooperation, recognize trade benefits, standardizing coordinating policies, cooperation negotiating to make the medication available while preserving efficiency. ID threat will energize the country to devote more attention to resources to improve ID surveillance. No Asian stability impact on Sharia. In top China sports economic independence and institution has the U.S., Japan, and the U.S. alliance security heads offer hedge against uncertainty and behavior, economic interference, services, states and mutual survive the U.S. Center alliance to preserve the amount of our cooperative institution, develop a habitat of dialogue and thereby moderate extreme unilateral behavior. Trump murders I-Law, Goldsmith, and 70 were witnessed the greatest onslaught by law in American history. Trump is trying to eliminate agency related to I-Law. Trump already spelled the wall for new agreements ever since the TPP. Trump is starting to terminate Iran deal and Paris NAFTA. Trump has made clear the plans to disengage international organization. Trump has made clear plans to disengage from international organizations.
Ready?
Yes.
Everything is conditional?
Yes.
Midterms DA, your bargain card's the link card. Title of the article is, if Trump were a clever populist, he'd demand universal health care.
Yes.
Trump couldn't pour water out of a boot if the instructions were on
You've
the
used
heel.
that
Why do
joke
you
like
think?
4 times.
Yeah, I have. You've read this DA every 1 and C all year. Please explain yourself
Well,
why you think this is a real
everyone.
link.
Some people don't read plans. But Our evidence does say if he were a clever pop, and then it goes on to describe why it is likely because he owes his party little. He has shown a propensity
Trump
for
does know
marketing and
something about
reinvention.
marketing. No, he doesn't.
Yes, he does. And our evidence describes instances where he's known to reinvent his positions, flip-flop.
Yeah.
It talks about
Yeah.
how
I
in
mean,
the
you can
election.
posture, but he won the election. It proves that he is a bumbling idiot, but he does
Yeah.
know something about how to make people believe what he's saying, even though
Okay.
they don't. So
The court's
That's good
counterclaim, this
opportunity.
nozzle card is about judicial leadership. This evidence doesn't talk about the courts, it talks about the enforcement of international law. Why is the court acting before the other branches necessary for your internal link?
Yeah, it says
That
that
makes
the importance of international rules and enforcement, we have to indicate that it's stronger than the head of state, which is why judicial constraints on the executive are
Yeah,
enforced.
why isn't that the F?
What the app is
Why
not
isn't
a
that the
judicial
F?
constraint.
Why
the
not?
app has it allows. That's the same thesis as our elections or midterms link. Is that Trump takes credit for the plan he claims
Why wouldn't
it's
he
his
take credit
idea.
for the counterclaim?
Because the court issues a ruling that's like, Trump, you're a fucking idiot. You're violating I law. You have to do
The
this.
court, no,
The
that's not
plan-
accurate. So if he
Yes,
takes credit
the
for
plan
Congress, why
issues a
can't he take
binding
credit for
duty.
the courts?
But what?
If he takes credit for an
He
action
doesn't
by
sign the
Congress-
court decision, dude.
But you said
If
he
he
knows something about
signs the
marketing.
plan.
our
You have to
argument will
pass
be
your
it happens
plan.
before he'll be forced to comply, so it won't be him doing it. It'll be the court, so he can't take credit for it. And
Okay.
we'll read a bunch of shielding cards.
Got it. The Politico, or the TPA-DA, your Politico card, says there's a political component to Republicans' pitch to Trump. They see a rocky path to maintain their House and Senate majorities. They're hoping to run a booming economy, etc. Why doesn't that motivate the effort to stop Trump from passing tariffs no matter what?
What do you mean?
This evidence says there are political motivations to blocking Trump's tariff push, which is the motivation for taking away TPA. Why doesn't that exist regardless?
I'm confused as to why this is related to the DA.
You said that the Congress will take away TPA from the president.
Right,
The
what's
reason
that
for
have
is
to do
because
with
they want to
tariffs?
stop him from passing the tariffs, which is what your card's about.
Oh, yeah,
This
that-
evidence
yeah,
says
that's
there
one
are
of the
political
political
motivations
yeah.
to stop him from passing tariffs.
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
Because they're concerned about, electoral implications. Their concern is that if the plan happens, or like our link argument is if the plan happens, they do that as one step too far. It'd be a betrayal the party, and
But not on
backlash against
tariffs.
Yeah, but
right?
you're not understanding those countervailing
Yes.
incentives because tariffs is on
Which
one side,
countervailing
their
incentives?
relationship with Trump is on the other side because they have a stable one that benefits them in other areas. They're willing to let him do the tariffs now.
Okay,
But if he destroys the relationship,
the plan
then
of
he's
Why
rich.
does if Congress passes the plan, why does Trump look like he's breaking his relationship with Congress?
Because most of it would be Democrats signing the plan. Obviously.
Democrats signing the plan. Got it.
Okay, Democrat. Oh, no. The irony.
I just wanted to make sure you have it.
Hmm? Yeah.
Actually, start prepping them. 9:02. Can I grab that stand from you all?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Pretty much yours, too.
Well, then even more so. Order's gonna be the topicality, the state's counterplan, the counterplan that just does the courts, midterms, TPADA, innovation DA. Is everybody good? Okay. Group the first two arguments on this page. These causation new strength of people are for the conspiracy burden. They don't assume a combination of these and the complete collapse of public infrastructure, which is our internal and coordination. The rubric of evidence is our argument, which means that Trump, the midterm DA, cannot turn this impact because Trump alone is now what's causing populism. However, the plan is able to solve it because it's international health solidarity and solve the underlying reasons internationally that economic insecurity is happening. Instability is not solved. Cooperative evidence most specific agent says that the breakdown of instability causes escalation because tensions already exist right now and shred interdependence. That response to the next argument because we break down the checks that exist right now. Interdependence is unlikely in a world where every country has to fend for its own because of a public health crisis. Trump doesn't crush ILAW. The broad strokes of ILAW are relevant. We read out a piece of evidence specific to international health governance that Trump doesn't crush that because it's a good business strategy. The ACA advantage first is yes, there's an econ impact. It says that the deterrent stability would be wrecked, which causes escalation, the complete collapse of the economy. Makes that impact more likely and clearly only assumes 2/3 of diets go to order. Yes, biodiversity impacts are internally actually assumes global extinctions. It says that species diseases would cause the most vulnerable species to go extinct, which causes global linkages to break down. The AC is not stable right now. Their evidence is old. Our evidence says that because of the premiums are set to spike by 90% and that are rolling into declining insurer profits are still not stable. The plan, yes, hospital death causes the economy. Their evidence is broadly about healthcare costs. It doesn't assume our internal language is about hospital death. That's not the same thing. That ripples through the economy is the number one systemic risk. The status quo does not solve precision medicine. This happens that there are some advances which proves its effectiveness. However, additional research is key, and there's no market for it right now, which is the reason why it wouldn't be effective. Yes, there's a spillover. Only advances in precision medicine from human advances in precision medicine are able to solve species advances. That was the piece of evidence. T. NHI means the government establishing plan to be able to recommend either single or multiplayer cast 5. The national health insurance plan to be able to recommend does not specify single versus multiplayer. Prefer our interpretation overlooking against value from providing governments that process tapped out if the app only has single payer apps or apps that guarantee universal coverage, but their interp does say it should only be single payer. Our topic still has limits based on publicly provided insurance. Conceptual precision, their interpretation through support debates over the abstract version again, China that cannot offer virtually any country's healthcare system, which always makes a public comparative administration reasonability, creating centering debates on the best interpretation. How creates a moral how to go over top county, especially at the NDT. The state's counterplan permutation do both. First, either the federal government can't take credit because of Chris's analogy and crossings, or it's perceived as state administration, or it links to the net benefit because waivers means crunching and killing credit for fixing healthcare rail and setting for health and trouble left without obvious where the divides and the state waivers have like the shower to define grounds flexibility situation the administration George Brown instruction changes to authorize only federal action to action sibling modeling. Nobody gives a fuck what states do in their constitutions may say. The U.S. Supreme Court of the State of the guarantee control of the states government the time one of the leadership of the global community so what is happening in the state of the state court of the federal jurisdiction to national courts. Fiat means the plan requires the FG to modify the use of commitment on the W-2 so the federal public options out in conflict with the state public options don't change our W-2 commitments that cause preemption turn solvency for both advantage March 14 foreign and change the state the regulations according to the commission of the word of the finance system challenge and domestic difficulties and insurance that Trump has come to the strong companies to retain the state of the regulations of the state of the negotiation the states for repeal Congress could explicitly preempt only federal authorities all states can't regulate options across state lines cause preemption regard 16 of the words of health communities and potential of public access to public access to confirm less the atomized non security less than personal parts health care configuration full real system raising health care with the difference statistical federal authority firm patient things from the possible safe thing for bearing levels of coverage and funding 50 safe fiat. It's a voting issue or interpretation that it gets to fiat a interior body or act currently existing fairness-based research and ground impossible because the law doesn't contemplate uniform nationwide action. 2 is education. They try the topic to the worst version that's only tailored to meet the state's counterplan rather than a focus on core healthcare controversies. No, solvency advocates is an independent voter because there's no comparative literature and you should have the team because it's a no-cost option. Now the just courts counterplan. Permutation, do the plan through the process of the counterplan. Permutation, do the counterplan. Permutation, do both. All of our solvency evidence assumes declaring a right to health care necessitates things like the court, which means we solve their net benefit. Now, 2 is the advantage. 1 is solvency evidence. Conflict of 6 and gridlock means the government will drag its feet, especially under Trump. They don't solve the most likely. Just declaring right to health care just increase the role of the government in insurance carmels. 8 is the health care part of circumstances, political positions, organization, 5% of the legacy, the cool words, the business, but recently socialized method of investment does not restore health to government guarantees their access to health care, but less if their preference current to the bill and same conflict of Trump from the state of government, the rights of the approaches and which means for taking the liberation to the government, market the rights of the purpose focusing on the level of health available legislation. Is key to enacting the right to healthcare. It's an affirmative obligation that has the same state's healthcare policy allows way 13 legal right to benefit the sound of the provision of the state of the state of healthcare, the necessary bill of facilitated enforcement of the legal right to to health and until the state emergency providing supervising health decisions with regard to undertake safe health decisions that you should ensure this right to rise to population with respect to human rights principles delays the solvency deficit because we've heard a short-term advantage about the collapse of the ACA gridlock means there'd be foot traffic and conditionalities that encourage run and get negative strategies which destroy data and logical situation strategy to protect the team because the damage is already done. The midterms did that. The midterms did that is the logical last one to uniquely likely because of the unpredictable Trump administration. People vote by rationalizing locked in ideologies. The Dems lose must even turn around financing Ryan 314 of the 20 continue their way with them both the trouble for the number of the jump on the fear and education that continues to force at the jump on the resources of the number of other issues are equally or more salient to voters as healthcare and Dems will use them prefer our metric of voter billings over self-report terrorists 370 solutions how to police for and some summer because you're dissatisfied pushing the child the wrong side just one voting at available 7 to immigrants and the format of the traditionally sector tell us that becomes a strong message by November choose student policy doesn't affect the midterms code for a big shift to the battle short term from the south to problem change stability to the healthcare middle the tax culture to the massive thing the shut down the advance of the 2% of the community the biggest from this part that's not useful to you to focus on a shift and pull the plan makes all across all the Dems who vote for the option there making single payer liveness now which causes primary fights and clocks their ability to win the midterms building 17 days good walk with their stuff their rights if they don't burn the 250 years that are really long to become from the computers there's some division standard and the first from the liveness just like there's something Democrats in the district chunk of the something that's from the pseudo-sidal political board but for something that happens with our social liveness assessment the chance of retaining the House voters will decide and turn out based on values not healthcare pressure which will then keep Americans that are going to fail through stuff that's different issue that some of the development of the future values as the job in the benefit of the organization was coming more towards the base of Medicaid more debt Medicaid impeachment impacted Trump would never be so unpopular with his base that it would incentivize impeachment which makes our public opinion internally doesn't make sense there's no removal regardless of the midterms until hey the 18 that if John has went to was certainly helping about the midterms go to the 2 and there's other majority of the to say when the video film 48 they still need to fit with the top with the rights of from the other conclusions on so that from the conclusion the partial much higher the House conclusion that would have actually the clear forward from the that's going to be possible to back Trump no matter what the foreign policy impact is empirically not because Trump's in office for 2 years and nothing's happened there's also no foreign policy impact to 11 they do for the past 2 years but the United States Trump is not going to be able to say that it's not to follow to watch to be sound not very fast doesn't if he wants to issue war he doesn't know how Mark said he doesn't know how the TPA decide the tariffs there are evidence that talk that already occurred the evidence is before the plan also doesn't change the congressional motivation about tariffs which is why Republicans are which is what Republicans are mad about the war on drugs failed between security cooperation's ineffective the past level of the past decade 20 decades of, or 2 decades of violence proof Trump doesn't push the plan Congress pushed the plan and then he signs it Trump has no leverage means he has no impact on the agenda of controversy the more asking the president himself brings like government the more leverage the president has to the crafted policy the president includes the kind of integration control of the accepting the vacant position of the president agenda the agenda results in ability to transfer figure local the issue to tax reform was denied and drafting Congress no TP or rollback budget negotiation took up all the oxygen Watson 321 spending with the last legislative business before the election of the lawmakers before the spending for the rest of the major legislations including a farm that the infrastructure worse than no food worse no causal items worse than 13 food spice consequently the rights of the prices linked in civil and number of partnership governments but keep taking relations to the civil participant process such as what can involve the domestic privilege of violence and the probability of between conflicts and take another establishment of loosely considered a lack of evidence a lack of evidence policy where fair the liberation tariffs and restricting efforts to increase food availability they have outward a terror impact and also their evidence does not say because escalation Trump would have no incentive to intervene with nuclear weapons in Mexico that's just ridiculous Mexico is also dependent on the US which means it can't break down the relationship because the US just has too much leverage no conflict in Latin America Miami Peril 13 regions into political Latin America result from the South American with the trade dispute the political and South American region of the universe which is the conflict of the institutions in South America is the best way to do this is striking the version of respect for the principles of international law international law the innovation decide precision medicine self-defeating legal reimbursements incentivize for innovation now there's also no link the plan doesn't affect overall healthcare costs because it's only an option on the individual exchanges which means it doesn't affect things like employer private insurance pharma innovation fails and isn't correlated with R&D investment Tom 15 pharma productive is medical protections promulgated with the out of whatever we can say there was a respective investment fee or building the next filter things for having less of the populist is attached to we got competition of making drugs been made public position of higher than the fund to capture the medical intensive basic words research by genetic advancement or insufficient there's obstacles like financing and infrastructure we literally just can't build a bunch of building in space colonization is inevitable only if we solve the station now balance between the position colonization and budget and future numbers of the players and making the better decisions making more importantly we keep human and civilization to have climate change but it's a public has to define future generations space the working to the rule of catch is not a sacrifice no link the plan doesn't no link between drug price and spending R&D and R&D spending has 116 defensive high price that the link between the state is full of real revenue producing investment to just reverse of individual development decisions for which things are really low there's little evidence of association drug also prices of the market will bear yeah.
The state's counterpoint, why is normal means for fiating the plan that the U.S. alters its commitments with the WTO regarding GATS?
Because there are legal barriers to the plan.
Okay.
Like it's literally illegal under U.S. GAAP commitments. The U.S.
Okay,
committed
so,
its healthcare
out of
commitments,
curiosity-
which means that it wouldn't provide goods publicly. Like
And why does that same standard of fiat not apply to the counterplan?
because the counterplan, so the
have an
agent,
When the
yeah,
states
the
undertake
agent-
action, no, when the states
have
undertake
ambit over
actions
federal
that violate
government.
international obligations, they have to negotiate with the federal government, and the
The
federal
federal-
government
like-
either forces them to stop it or changes those international obligations.
Yeah, and we've read,
Same logic as the
we've
plan.
read evidence. So we've read evidence that the federal government has an incentive to preempt. The only ambit that the counterplan has is over the states, which means that it is not a logical interpretation of fiat to say that that means the government
The
withdraws
court's
commitments.
counterplan. The Elzeway evidence says that when we just declare there's an international right to health, if we don't follow it up with some sort of legislation, then it's not binding, the international community doesn't perceive it. Is there a piece of evidence that says Congress will not listen to the court ruling?
The first piece of evidence I read says that there'd be foot dragging because of the hysteria over socialized medicine,
That
which means
is-
that there would never be a
To be
government
clear,
provided
that's the
option.
card from the summer of 2008.
Your card's from 10. Show up.
Do you think it's more likely during this administration that there'd be publicly provided healthcare?
All right.
Like, have you seen the gridlock in Congress?
The midterms did. What
Yeah.
aides and the Oval Office check Trump?
What agencies?
No, what aides? Your Ev is about like the adults in the room.
Mattis.
Mattis. Bolton's the new NSA.
Yeah, we're
Master's
pretty hard
gone.
Yeah, we have a phenomenal
We were
card
pretty
that-
good Bolton
Right.
defense.
The single payer link turn, which Dems are running on single payer now?
So like really leftist, progressive Dems.
And that hurts them with who?
That hurts them with independents and more moderate Dems. And it's our argument is not that like it necessarily causes backlash from particular voters, but that the internal civil war in the Dem party
So it
means that
causes
they're ineffective at collectively
Dim
campaigning.
infighting. So the Bernie branch of the wing versus the more moderate branch of the wing fight against each other, and
That
like,
is what infighting means, yes.
right. So why does that, like, what piece of evidence says voters perceive that or that harms their ability in the election?
I mean, like that link turn piece of evidence says
It means
that.
funding from
That
the
just
Triple
said
C
it's-
doesn't go to the right candidates.
What it says? All right. So this evidence says the litmus. So the Milbank evidence is from August 16th. It predicted after the bill was announced in like 16 and then went away that it would cause a ton of infighting and collapse their chances. We read uniqueness evidence from March of this year that says they're just crushing the GOP.
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
why is like the past 8 months not disproven this infighting?
Well,
argument?
actually, I think that the past 8 months have proven this infighting because there's been a lot of turnout in places where there are contested Dem primaries, which is a show that there are Dems that are mobilizing to fight for whether they'll
Dems
be
have been
progressive
just
or a candidate.
thrashing the
jungle
GOP in
primaries
special
prove
elections.
this
Which
because there's a
election
lot of-
has proven the infighting?
Well, like I'm giving you examples. Jungle.
Feinstein not getting the nomination in California.
Yeah.
She's like anti-gun control.
Step up. 547.
Is Jeff too loud for you? Is Jeff too loud for you?
No, man, just I wasn't on track for it.
I agree.
The order will be the court's counterclaim, T, state's counterclaim, advantage 2, advantage 1.
Give me 1 second.
Yep.
Okay, I should be good.
Everyone else good? Concede the proof test competition not going for conditionality is good to see ideological flexibility, most portable skills, debaters need to be able to persuade people of all ideologies, key to make flex, get first class speech, have choice, even if prep need to have the same flexibility, even playing the field skews, inevitably T, D is for no impact, good out, 1 CF keywords, answers every counterpart reasonability, if they win it on T, crowds us, if they win on T, also the thesis of condo means if we lose our crime, we kick it for us, topicality, national health insurance means the government directly covers every citizen for an insurance package, the app doesn't do that, they just make it access to insurance easier by offering a public plan, but it wouldn't cover everybody, just people that choose it, that explodes limits and multiplies F mechanisms because it means that anything that increases access to insurance is topical. They let in mechanisms only allow buy-ins to Medicare or Medicaid, and they can offer universal subsidies or vouchers for insurance, or they can offer universal access to a government health insurance plan by conditioning it on anything they want, like access to a public plan for everyone who agrees to join the military or have a child or be an organ donor. The list is endless. It makes research, class, and engagement impossible. Also, Jack's on the ground because they can craft a public plan that is specifically targeted to only capture a particular segment of the population and resolvency cards that are not many people would join it, and then just say that the ACA and other currently existing government plans like Medicare and Medicaid are way bigger than the app and couple of our DAs, and we can never win. Make clash impossible. Their counter-interpretation cards from a fucking medical student. Get out of here. Obviously, there's nothing to define, and links to all of our offense are over-limiting conceptual precision arguments are assuming that our interpretation is single here, but we didn't say you have to cover all benefits, just that you have to universally provide people a benefit package, which means they basically drop and have our interpretation have no offense in the 2AC, and don't let them make new arguments or contextualize to the interpretation we read in the 1 year, because my 2 and C is predicated off of 2AC miscues. You can still have variations in the benefit package, financing details, etc., which means it's not just one app, and it's not conceptually imprecise, reasonability is arbitrary, and judge intervention is inevitable because people have varying opinions about T. Just saying good is good enough links to our impacts and makes it 2AC to be after the state's counterplan perm. Adjudication do both links and midterms. It has Trump passed a plan at the federal level, so you can easily take credit for it. It doesn't shield because the plan and the counterplan happened at the same time, so it wouldn't look like it was just the state's idea, which is the key to not linking to the DA. Their Reynolds evidence is about assumes conservative plans that Trump has pushed, not a liberal one like the public option, so you wouldn't be able to take credit for it. It doesn't link because look, our argument isn't that Trump can spend anything. If that were true, his current approval ratings wouldn't be in the shitter because he already tries to take credit for everything now. Our argument is he needs a good opportunity to take credit for something he actually did. The counterplan wouldn't be that opportunity because the states did it, not him. It would look like he failed to pass federal reform, so the states had to step in. If you try to take credit, the governors and media would hit back and say he didn't do anything. At worst, the counterplan links less voters would believe Trump, which lowers the probability, but link voters will give Trump credit for things he didn't do. The economy proves ruined in 18.8%, give a positive rate to the economy. At the same time, President not getting credit for the thing he boasts about most of the economy. They say that Trump deserves credit. They say Obama voters are correct positive economic trends begin in Obama since he takes credit for everything voters are worried about. Say both seriously, no, he's an exaggerator. Voters would give credit to the states. Argument takes that attitudes unemployment or like vote for their senator, military responsibility, national government respondents who are responsibility for state government show the significant possibility between their responsibility after traditional vote choice and voting paper match. Assignment responsibility citizens be will making distinctions of what different levels of government do these structure where they should be credit for policy outcomes. The data proves for low and innovation with federal efforts to raise minimum wage to stable lives state should produce diversion between states and federal commerce results as well for the state, and then credit for innovation at the state level. House passed a bill through the one if I gave the House credit their base argument. It's about education. Adjudication says the absence of solvent is only about judicial precedent, which is irrelevant to norm diffusion based on medication. These of course have little impact on international courts. They look for guidance to precedent, political factors, really rival ideological judicial philosophies and role corrections to U.S. courts along with the inherent institutional constraints courts face and real social policy or economic pressures that will endure. There assumes a patchwork of different cases and state courts that implement mental state constitutions to recognize the right to health guarantees a much higher degree of societal involvement and commitment than other evidence assumes that access and so the one to see evidence they would get way more attention. Framing point no one to see evidence makes a distinction between fed and state action and set up our sufficiency argument. There one to see Sean evidence says the counterpoint is sufficient. We would demonstrate achievability and enforceability and integrate international norms into the policy-making processes of all the states. The Gordon evidence theory just says that we need to increase access to medical services, which is what we do. They're one to see Kinney evidence says we get international solvency if we realize the right within U.S. structures. Constitutional plank solves it. Much first 15 controversial commitment. Healthcare drugs affecting large reduction in mortality promotes social preference and process of collective reasoning to include additional input voices, controversial title, committed public discussion, monitoring, reporting, empirical results of progression support that health and fuels a political and social process along states to determine the best way to implementation of states have fuel recognition without the United States providing effective implementation at the national level. Doing it 50 times obviously solves better. The Marx evidence amendment that 50 states of the United States should recommend to the United States Trade Representative the withdrawal of the United States commitments in all health-related services under the General Agreement on Trade in Services in the United States to negotiate compensatory adjustment with trade parties affected by the withdrawal, and the United States should not enter any new commitments inconsistent with the aforementioned policies. The states should maintain that these recommendations are the only acceptable means of incorporating their position into United States trade policy. The U.S. Trade Rep is legally bound to consult the states and incorporate the recommendations. Solves preemption. Marxin 14 political legislation for Ugari identifies and advocates influence international insurance and legislation requires the federal government consult the states on U.S. Trade Rep must establish consultation process on which the states are informed on a continuing basis under the agreements that potentially have impact on states and trades. Must be provided opportunities to submit information and advice to trade rep must take this into account when formulating the United States position trade issues. The trade representative must take in any effort to show that the states are involved in development of the position of the United States market at the United States. They don't solve this. Either the U.S. Trade Rep would not withdraw their commitment under the plan, or they would because it's a conflicting law, which means they do it for the states too. Durable fiat solves the states will do it even if they try to preempt them. And their evidence is about state patchwork. Marx, which is not the counterpart. Marx supporting the channels to trade in services by developing this domestic regulation under GATSI, redetermined licensing as far as the prohibiting state licensing for more versus necessary use by using the entire system of licensing the GATS challenge if constantly complying with multiple states. Licensing requirements are agreements to merge some. The next thing the United States might have no choice but to create a real federal agency for licensing insurance. The country can challenge state law if the law cause foreign insurers to suffer economic laws on a discriminatory basis. They need to comply with the regulatory regimes at 50 different states makes it difficult for foreign insurers to enter U.S. insurance market. Foreign insurance can limit the fragmented system of licensing and regulation altogether by challenging the system itself on new domestic disciplines being negotiated. Also, the implication of their argument is a rollback but federal follow-on. There would be 50 state pressure, which is what the Jackal evidence says of the cooperate. There's an incentive to cooperate the states. It means they would just withdraw the 50. Their next card about regulating cross state lines assumes state patchwork, which is not the current plan. The 50 state fiat debate is good if key function live the topic. Otherwise, the app is incentivized to proliferate app subset apps. We have no generic. When I see Jackal evidence as an advocate for state uniformity through comebacks, it's in the lit, individual no impact. They have fed key warrants like a rights and borrowing cruise. They don't need to have advantage, distortion, error, neg, infinite, prep, and last speech reasonability. If they can always win a marginally better interpretation, so the rational should be making debate impossible. Anything else over incentivizes theory, crowds of substance, reject the argument of the team. Their counter interpretation doesn't solve because getting one state or one unitary body means the counterplan would lose every debate. Not solving, only solving 5% of the F compacts are in the lit. Only certified states were indirect universal state-based health insurance and what it looks like involve multi-state cooperation. In compacts, the global governance advantage cross-six devastated this. They obviously have incentive to cooperate to stop a disease from killing their economy or all their population, so they would do it anyways. That's the Peterson evidence. Their only answers are resources thing, but China and a bunch of Japan and a bunch of other countries in East Asia will obviously front the money because they have huge economies and it's in their interest, is what Chris said. When I see cross-six natural resilience, algebra evidence says that their impact assumes a level of virulence and transmissibility has never existed in history. Evolutionary pressures means that there's adaptability and some people would be immune to it. The York evidence says it would burn out. They would just say that it's too transmissible, but they can cite no empirical example of a disease that's ever occurred that way. The Brubacher evidence says that Trump and EU populism takes out and swamps the internally. There's no way that they overcome that. The planned signal wouldn't stop Trump from still doing a shit ton of populist things, and there would still be populist movements in Europe because that's the ongoing trend of their population, and they obviously wouldn't think, they don't even know what the fucking right to health is. Like, ask the average person that voted for Trump or De Le Pen in France if they even know what international law or stability is. The no impact Asian stability archaeology evidence says that there's economic interdependence, and U.S. alliances in Asia obviously mean that there's no incentive to go to war because they're not suicidal. They also didn't extend and impact Asian stability. The Trump murders ILO card will be in the 1R actually. ACA bitch. No impact on the economy. Their evidence is citing any data. The Thompson card says that it would be in a conventional war at the bottom, and they just asserted that clearly only assumes 2/3 of dyads, which is not substantiated. It cites data from the last 80 years and says that it empirically leads to threat deflation because people want to cut military expenditures to pay for the economy, and it's unpopular. More evidence. Jervis 11 more saying economic difficulties would produce you so hard to believe the complex would be great enough to lead the community defining each other, even extreme versions of trade become destroyed. It's hard to see how leaders, in my opinion, would have believed that their countries prosper by attacking others. The fact that we have seen such sharp economic downturn without anyone suggesting forces solution shows even bad times bring about greater economic conflict could not make more unthinkable. 08 proves stressor. 14 analysts assured prices will you conflict through diversion wars or great power conflict interests otherwise into for economics and peace and the peacefulness. The same 2007 the interstate appliances the prices studies for the various such natural conflict prices in the terrain. Precious wars they drop the all causes defo warming oil spills and pollution is a carry of evidence destroys biod. Inevitably they can't solve the career evidence cites 240 studies of keystone species that never cause the ecosystem class proves that it's resilient doesn't cascade slow solves precision medicine. The whole evidence says there's tons of research booming now. They're just they just say we need more researcher. Ev doesn't establish their Ev doesn't establish or bring the ACA a stable argument. It can't possibly solve an impossible debt because it only covers 5% of the population. How can hospitals be so indebted from such a small segment of the market? Go back to the global governance advantage. The last argument I would make is they cannot empirically verify with any observational data that health concerns trump national security concerns for countries in East Asia or any other country like Russia, China, Japan. If they think that the United States or Trump is antagonizing them, they'll go to war and they can't have an example that proves it.
Okay, are you good?
I am.
Okay, I want to talk about the state's counterplan. Your links to midterms answers, the two pieces of evidence you read are like pretty great on like when Trump boasts about things, nobody gives him credit. Why do you think that there's can read you a line from your evidence. The president isn't getting credit for the things he boasts about the most.
Right.
Like, what distinguishes the economy from something like healthcare?
That line is explicitly referring to the thing he boasts about the most, which is the economy. He goes on to say that voters think Obama is the reason that the economy is booming.
Sure, so why?
And it says that voters are wary of believing anything he says because they know he takes credit for everything.
Why if the plan passed, why wouldn't voters just easily as rationalize that like Congress is the reason why healthcare legislation passed? You've made the argument that the election's all about Trump. Like,
oh, come on.
why does
like, obviously, if the plan passed, the president would have to sign it. He'd have to push it and do a lot of work. What this card establishes is that when he takes credit for things he's obviously not connected to, voters are wary and skeptical, and they say, no, you didn't do that.
Okay, I guess the second question I have about your links to midterms answers is the first one's about the economy, the second one's about unemployment. You've not read evidence about healthcare, and we've made a specific argument that because the healthcare process includes waivers, Trump does have the authority to either deny
I did
or sign
answer
a
that
waiver.
argument with your waivers cards assumes that Trump is initiating the process by telling states to do things with waivers, but those things are conservative ideas, not the public plan, which means there's be no way that he can take credit for that because he's not pushing that at federal level.
He can't take credit for conservative things. Why does he take credit for the plan?
Because he signs it and implements it through federal law.
The distinction that you're walking is literally just because Trump signs it, even though he's a buffoon on everything else.
It's not just he signs it. Presidents are really important in passing legislation at the federal level. They have to lobby for it. They have to make public statements that show their approval before it happens.
The state's counterplan solvency deficit about international law. So our internal link to global health governance is the legitimacy of global health governance. Other countries are scared when big countries like the U.S. have the authority and then come and negotiate and participate in international law. States can't do any of that. Why do international countries care at all what states do in their 50 individual constitutions?
So I cited 4 1AC pieces of evidence that establish a sufficiency threshold that is not that. And it says that simply...
Is just like our cards don't say the words federal government.
No. Your cards say that simply providing access to healthcare goods would signal that we are in compliance with the law, give it legitimacy, and then that solidifies global health governance. That is the threshold your 1AC evidence says. You are cherry-picking a line that the rest of your evidence does not agree with.
Gotcha. The state's 50-state fiat argument. So I understand that you read a card and also extended a 1C card, I guess, that says that like compacts are in the literature. Why do you think that means that you get uniformity and an unprecedented compact with all 50 states?
Well, our 1NC Jackal evidence does assume uniformity. It says that compacts can improve coordination and consistency between states, and it does assume 50 states. It says there's 22 compacts that have 50 state membership.
It's innovation, TPA, midterms.
Let's take 1 second. Can you just read this uniformity thing? Because apparently that's your new kind of interpretation. That was, whatever, 4 seconds, 5 seconds.
So states, innovation, TPA, midterms, yeah. Is that it?
States, innovation, TPA, midterms.
2 and C card that you're reading?
No, he's not reading a card. He's just going to say one more thing.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yep.
All right.
Uniformity is key, otherwise the counterfront loses every debate. Fragmentation solving tabs which kills negative ground because and nobody reads it. Their intro doesn't solve our offense because there's no standard for uniformity. We can just read a non-uniform counterfront where states have reimbursed their traits that differ by $1. The innovation DA can see there's no link to it, and also we can't get off the rock. The TPA advantage can see that there's no terrorism impact, and also there's no impact to U.S. agriculture. The midterm DA, they Trump collapses global deterrence. He'll preemptively strike North Korea and impose sanctions on Iran, forcing cascading wave of nuclear proliferation results in Japan and SoCo nuclearizing, which collapses East Asian credibility or stability and collapses the Iran. Also, he'll collapse the Iran deal, which shreds non-public credibility, causes a conflict with China that goes nuclear. The Tracy didn't read impact defense to any of these scenarios in our evidence. It's an impact filter. It makes every scenario for conflict both more likely and destructive. Rosen and nuclear armed countries would be unlikely to dismantle historical confidence to arm races, precipitate wars because governments confidence, powerful financial exhaustion, arms races produce large wars to make it harder to prevent accident or otherwise use of nuclear weapons. Turns econ because war and collapses global trade. Post-war, obviously, turns disease by collapsing health infrastructure, killing tons of major population centers and nukes devastate habitats, which turns environment. It turns East Asian stability because it would literally start a war with China. It turns both advantages. He's a protectionist who makes econ decline and everyone harms the international system. Low business 17 president has been trade war for 20% terror about Trump. Chief steps involved with the Northern school being crisis protection by cutting supply off can hardware rest on the harm consumption. Better willing to play Albert history shows that trade ships have global economy seems like the direction we're headed. He of it trades international credibility green and 17. Trump has already read U.S. credit. Why would another country listed the U.S. government immigration act? So was the legitimacy motivated? What authorities America have with the president tweet that news video as the American people? How can U.S. press partners to protect civilians while the White House is losing restriction rights for using our traffic tribes post off CF didn't wait for results of public option Wadman and 70 which was taken over the House of 2018. The top 50 markets that Trump could make a tweet control issue for how much with defenders. Seats in a harder match is still popular Trump to be defeated once taken Senate. That's when just we would have they went on healthcare now public option they can do all through it. Reconciliation they only need 50 votes to AC1. Our evidence assumes black swans because the DA is about Trump on popularity. He's such a bumbling idiot like Chris said that he's not able to pass anything popular, so only the plan gets a watershed moment. 2AC2 a dim wave is coming. Attitudinal behavior evidence proves experts agree the wave is already formed because Trump's approvals are historically low and the Dems have a 9-point lead of generic ballot. Recent elections confirm the polling data, which means they can't win. It's too far out. The only thing that can save them is Trump changing the narrative to something more positive, which only the plan offers. That's our Rothbard evidence. Dems win now. Trump on popularity is key. So Lisa in 316 political experts with a direction, national political violence, increasing topic around broad, how control about the fight for House control. Will be fought to related factors in 2018, but we're going first to Trump on popularity is higher than the high. Thursday average seat loss for 1946 to the House and the House with the President's approvals below 50% of 36 seats. Dems only need 23 seconds. It's with their base direct soldiers to for Trump. There's way building everything. Tells us that Dems win. Trump has shifted the electorate. Howard in 315. Trump has shifted the electorate. Leaves Republicans less dependent on that legislative voters, but less often than contractors when talking to Dems midterm campaigns. One less opponents of whoever sits in the White House. Trump is generating massive opposition. Nature of opposition helps them maximize electoral impact. Helpful. Should they remain popular among whites without closure reads, but less opposed to that shift. Let them erase the deficit. Republicans tried to learn about the charge hands. It didn't work. Tim's current papers to win 24. They need to take back the House. Republicans hold 23. That tried to district that Trump lost in 2016, 37. They won by fewer. That Trump gives Dems a chance to narrow those gaps. 2AC3's healthcare doesn't matter. 1. It's a script of the squirrel. Healthcare hasn't been on the agenda in months, but the plan changes that and makes it a witch issue. 2. Their evidence just says that voters care about multiple things, which doesn't rank them, and none of them makes Trump popular, so it can't solve the link. 3. Healthcare is the #1 issue at Giesta. In 226, economy, tax, and immigration are carrying less weight with voters than healthcare, where Dems have sugar back Republican. Healthcare is deeply important by 53%, economy 43%, immigration 38, harassment 36, taxes 35, Russia 26. Healthcare costs are the major issue driving independents away from the GOP and alienating their base in battleground sets. So the states, so the plan lets Trump save the majority. Olstein in 3-1. The track poll says the high public approval of the ACA, the major shift has mostly been driven by independence. Healthcare is the top issue for voters heading in the 2018 midterm verdict. The rising cost of healthcare battleground states. Far fewer people say they want to hear can't talk about healthcare costs. So Dems to repeal the ACA. Trump had Republicans in Congress are really pro. Steve cuts 74% now hold a favorable rule. Medicaid nearly 40% support Republicans to explore expansion, which also answers the values and policy not key. 2AC4 is it's too soon. Not only matters if they win that Trump will simply boost his approvals before the midterms, but the plan to be out is the only way to do that, which I've said above. And the Rothbard evidence responds because it's citing attitudinal behavior evidence. Even if polls can sometimes be inaccurate too far out, the fact that special elections uniformly have been showing an enthusiasm gap proves them right. 2AC5 is a single by return. They've got it backwards. Super leftist Dems aren't in battleground states, and they aren't going to just start sabotaging the more moderate Democrat elections. Pennsylvania proves because Connor Lamb got elected. Their evidence from August of last year, Dems have consistently won special election. None of them have been campaigning on single payer. Their context of their evidence has been Bernie and Conyers were so hyped about it because of the ATA repeal effort, but the attention has shifted away. Democrats in battleground states are already using the promise of public option. They're running on it to shield being from being tied from single payer Jaspin. It's a new public option game momentum. The campaign controller ahead of the year's midterm. The public option being pushed out to for office in response to the failed repeal and replace Democrats in the House. Also, picture public option. That means the plan allows Trump to steal their primary agenda item and sticks them with single payer's alternative. alternative which triggers something harder. It's also not for actually them. Their evidence from August last year in fights over against attacks of the AC revolt all united them. They wrote straight ticket and are still standing strong. Trump would spin the plan as populist, dramatically boosts his popularity, which turns their populism impact atoms. And Secretary Trump appear the perfectly lead the U.S. universal health care. Trump is elected through dimension that are process areas to Trump causes roads, dimension weakness, political ideology. Trump's persecution of ideology for top of his record rules, you work conservative person, that's the path to get their ideology. Will pass universal health care to unique opportunity. Trump has by campaign powers to deliver change. Trump is more popular ideological hub, and Trump can spin universal health care to secure the border space app. For congressional report, the fear of Trump supporters might commit some. For Trump, there's a little bit of a universal health care. Don't you by supporting that Carter's market? Supporting it. 286 is no impeachment. Yes, there is silver and 17 Democrats take over the House. We give Democrats far greater powers to investigate Trump's key media heroes. What kind of district for impeachment? Trump is more conservative than how Trump and widely picks on GPs, more predictions for people to raise which make remove Trump more palatable. Trump made a mistake in people meant it's easier for Trump to remove zero Republicans taking Harvard and the church trying to treat Jims. Begin impeachment 2019 and Roberts had the Pence get the better shot of what an election 2020 for Republicans and should be seeking impeachment gave the opportunity to throw the president over force. 287 is like Trump is rational or something. No, we've just been lucky so far. Cohen in 17, Trump's lucky year the world did not blow up. This was good fortune, not restrained by his wealth. We'll run out the U.S. faces a choice, either war, disarming Korea, or a bit of redlands missile sent to Ukraine will cut Russia's Chinese military power is accelerating. Conflict North Korea's moving toward the climate soon. We'll order tested nuclear missiles. The U.S. might shoot down to into a devastating war conflict with Russia because more likely Russia will poke back East Europe criminals and anxiety about stagnation. Exacerbate the situation. Combination of tensions, constant war. If any conflict goes hot, attackers will put the U.S. preoccupied with Korea would be less aggressive to take Russia. Foreign leaders know one thing about Trump is incapable of focusing. No checks. Call on 323. Bolton's appointment to represent Trump is sick of being constrained. President surrounds himself with enablers. Bolton will feed his worth and sees bullying maximalism, disdain for diplomacy, tends to devalue military instrument of all personnel, believe the world less safe.
902.
You want me to do that here?
For now, at least, we'll see.
Yeah, fair. 4 or 5.
Keep 4 or 5.
Yeah, I'm emailing it right now. It's going to be the ACA advantage, the global health governance advantage, T, stage midterms.
ACA Health T States.
Yeah, sorry. I need to get all my stuff together. ACA, Health, T, State.
You look at me if I'm about to drop something.
I mean, I might.
Not missing a flow, right?
Don't tell me. Hey, remember to read the plan.
That's what I was saying. It's the exact same look Bricker gave me when I forgot to read the plan.
Oops.
Oh, that didn't happen here.
Your face is really red right now.
Sorry?
Your face is really red.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Now I've lost all my self-confidence in my speech.
Sorry.
You're a rock star.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, like Nickelback.
Longer doesn't do it anyway.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Economic cause of war causes Trump lashed out because of the diversion where the United States caused a battlefield effects with the fact of the attack internationally clear evidence since 2/3 of diets didn't go to war, 1/3 did, which is the started before Trump is the 1/3 is the study in their evidence. Everybody knows this. Everybody reads that card. The last two cards by 2008 doesn't prove anything impact because it weakened the process that provided national economic resilience and provided Trump's rise of power, which allows him to lash out as per our constant evidence about every step not going for see the impact even you see the impact even the internal link is not 5% of the population services hospitals are leverage to the exchanges and ensure access costs and cost massive hospitals because of the increases on uncompensated care, so only maintaining insurer participation in the exchanges is sufficient to solve that. Now, the global health governance advantage that Jeff ran at the top of the tree has no card associated with our evidence. The global health is a critical conflict gambler because a lot of countries do cooperate and build scientific linkages, which reduces the incentive to actually solve the impact to the midterms. The disease causation because diseases can combine traits, like virulence and lethality. The one evidence says that combination is occurring now because of increasing zoonotic diseases spreading globally, which makes things likely burnout doesn't prove this because past diseases don't disprove future diseases. The popular argument not going for the age stuff causes distinction because the public health crisis causes lash out and the cost of independence. The reason it causes escalation with China and the rest of the country. China wouldn't invest in the country because our political differences between China and countries like Vietnam. So only multi-national cooperation solves it. The last arguments were answered by there are normative foundations for IR that are evidence takes into account. Now topicality, counter interpretation. We have to provide a plan available to everybody, either a single payer or public option solves our limits because they doesn't allow subsidies or other stuff that's not the public plan. So it's only public option. So it's only the innovation based on the degree of intervention in the market. A single payer, public option, 2 single payer doesn't allow the subsidies act because those aren't public insurance. The public insurance doesn't allow the conditions act because you can't. Those aren't universally available. I.e. public option to everybody in the military is not immediately universally available, which is what our counter interpretation is, over limiting their interpretation to topics to the worst version because it's only single payer makes it impossible to innovate. Proven by this year, benefit innovation is bad because it leads to bad single payer acts like single payer for X disease over the X disease, which is terrible innovation leads to child our interpretation better because it's about the degree of government intervention in the market financing mechanism. Those also because there aren't external advantages to slightly different financing mechanisms. So there's small link to limiting and a big link to over limiting. Reason motivating information creating moral has to go over topic instead of going for substance arguments. Internal links limits are not arbitrary because we still have to debate what a good enough interpretation is. Now the state's counter plan links in that benefit the Reynolds evidence that Trump will take the opportunity of the counter plan to issue waivers to the states and use that opportunity to explain why he has participated in state policy innovation. Our evidence is really good that he would use this opportunity to take on federal policy and to be able to spin it as per their link to midterms. That he's this clever populist who would want to spin since all of their evidence assumes sole state action, not linking to Trump. Our evidence says he would take action after the counterplan, which the two NC just didn't answer. Link differentials are bad for him because it leads to bad policy making where you assert that 1% difference is enough to put in negative. If we win a threshold of linking, it's enough for you to put in vote negative. Last the card about not taking credit, the Rubin card about not taking credit for things he didn't do. He would do stuff like waivers, and if it proves that he doesn't take credit for stuff he doesn't do, he wouldn't take credit for the plan to because Congress would pass it. He would be bullied into signing it. The last two cards about state only action, which is not our argument. 2 NC counter, not going for the preemptive argument. 2 NC counter bad because this two issue often makes it possible for the affirmative way you should reject the team because it's no cost option. Modeling arguments, no modeling because states are subnational, don't send a state political signal necessary to reinvigorate confidence in the WHO, international political agreements. The state aren't involved in the cautious confidence in negotiation, which is banks that act still stalls because the implementation at the federal level, the 1NC evidence to prove their argument because it says a public plan should be established. Then we've read an internal link card about the perception of the public plan. The banks have uniformly doesn't solve this. Or link card 12, bedroom and healthcare election. Parts of the federal state government insured very widely from state to state, address state variation. Under Medicaid, post uniform standards and solely administration in the state shall they must serve evidence about follow on, no follow on, violate the little of a state health policy resembles the lab efficiency health policy sign. The lab metaphor and info transfer all state by the policy fusion is so much that's not occurred all the past or shift to demonstrate elimination of federal loan state currency and fears pay for profit relaxation no fit state fiats voting used to also Afghan because abusing fiat makes literature based often impossible because no one is supposed to count on topic issues the education they force debate into the force forms the corners of literature to avoid core controversy counterfactuals also often like fiat an existing compact or existing by like a single state counterpart that allows opt-in not key to net ground because the topic is tiny. Do some research. The 1NC isn't an advocate for compacts and uniformity and the public option, so they don't have literature for their counterpart no bias because the topic is tiny. Compacts in the literature means should fiat an existing compact with a few states and then say opt-in midterms doesn't cause the public option. Killboard 16. The first state problem with the front of the option in 2009 was Democrat, Democrat, House, House, something high for some Democrats, even alongside the legislation, be filibuster doesn't turn the economy that's toxic one, economic, minimal, those boost innovation, one side, point, reducing GDP growth, 1-2%, 10% the effective Canadian because still aluminum, 2% import homes, right? Price of higher growth, drop down to the healthcare, not here, resulting in not turn on inequality, gun control, poverty, etc. Especially after recent school shootings, first prefer polls based on voter valence rather than their anecdotes of crowd services. Voters care about nebulous values and rationalized candidates based on those Silvissa and Harvard cards from their cards prove this because it talks a lot of time about Lamb who ran on a pro-labor, anti-Paul Ryan agenda, not healthcare not keeping competitive races. This answers the Kaiser poll and their Olstein cards. Kaiser 1.6 healthcare is a low priority among medical states and healthcare and the economy most important issue in the diocese of voters into structure about election racist economy numbers one of fewer backwards states healthcare the well the plan to not put this at the top of the agenda because it's just one policy action not there's just when the over election Cohen says a Paul individual policy action disappear because it's subsumed by the overall environment which the gun control etc. Is sufficient to create. Now the impeachment or is no impeachment regardless of the midterm they need 10 or 15 Republicans. GOP doesn't care about moles investigation. They're loyal to their base. Why would the GOP risk angering their base when they've already lost a midterm? They move 321. Even if they want to Republicans win the convention change Trump against the base wouldn't stand for that. Heard my comment for Trump went right after the midterm final not going to do anything particular. They sure aren't going to do anything explicit political damage already been done. All the safety stories in place. Now the impact defense. Trump doesn't no impact Trump foreign policy. He hasn't broken the Iran deal or started war in North Korea because there are structural constraints of the White House that are boot evidence. No proof that we get a new card because they read a new card. Mueller 16 for decades. There have been more alarm about Pelosi are so than predicted weapons not famous defensive problems. I think those using those so for each of the right jury management or even for the larger population run by monsters Martha Carter monsters. No Bolton impact sounders 220 people does not mean more the in both cases if these are representative of votes CDs have Congress will just kind of use proper structural plan even the last see prefer action more for policy more predictable than before. Their new card is wrong because Trump won't change foreign policy. Bolton maintain more strength than Trump in foreign policy. How little has changed since the house is in business as usual. The White House is Russian China just and Bush policy in the Middle East hasn't changed.
What was that last card?
That was the first card for impactee, so the Walt 18 card.
Okay. And then you read the no Bolton card, right?
Yeah. I read the Saunders card for no Bolton. I marked the Prolif card at run by
How much stuff do y'all
monsters.
have?
We had 404.
No,
No, they have 547.
Yeah, 547. Oops.
Oh, they had
That's not it. Yeah.
Because of the weather really chaos.
Yeah, there's that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
You need to follow up the same for traffic. Or are they gonna come here anyway?
they're coming anyway.
Okay.
Their flight was canceled. I rescheduled it for Friday. SPL could call me Thursday, and I was like, well, obviously let them wait until during run one. We'll still take it if you will. Right, yeah.
Given the alternative.
Yeah, exactly. Alright. Well, no shame. But they were like, oh, we're gonna get them. She's like, no shame, but I don't feel like I'm smashed. It's like, I'm going here for it.
Send this out. There's one post.
Well, well, you know,
I'm actually
also,
also
no, the bus. Just
Oh, here's water. Yeah.
No.
You don't want water or anything?
No, well,
Thank you.
so she still was 5. Maybe increased a little bit. Just walk with them for like a full hour without like for all the
Usually, like how many do you actually ended up having? Okay. But not 26.
Nifty.
Preteens is even worse.
Oh yeah.
We overcommitted, still overcommitted by one.
Really?
Yeah, just Clay is
Oh,
basically
sure,
you
sure.
do grad school and so much just like, you know, you get to come here as a judge more rounds. So fighting the fight, but
Is he in
in for 7.
solid?
Even I'm not cool enough to put him in for 8. That's just
I just gotta make him free.
yeah. I talked to Nick about it, he was just like, yeah, it's like what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Okay. That wasn't good select.
So, did they read that same card where you told Joey Beans to get that trash out of your face?
I thought about using that online. I think I just said get this out of here.
No, it was definitely out of your face specifically.
Oh no, I meant this to NC.
Oh.
I think I said in this one, get this out of here.
Yeah, I don't remember trash being said.
I mean, it's a good line, but I feel like if you overuse it, then you lose your.
Oh, kind of like
What, state
Trump.
senator?
Yeah, because Chris says the Trump boot thing in every debate.
I've said like
this
4.
year.
That's not true. I've never said anything true. I don't understand. why,
It's
like,
that he said it every time Jake stretched.
Yeah. Jake loves that line, by the way.
Oh,
He
it's
thinks
great. Yeah,
he
it's
thinks
great.
it's so funny.
So what would he do? Would he like hold the boot straight up while reading the instructions?
Well, that's the whole point. Is he doesn't know. He doesn't understand.
Well, that would be like the only way, right?
Dude, you don't overthink it, right? The whole point is that it's a paradox. All right.
No,
Just
it's
like we're
not.
talking about.
Like I think that's like he would be like that.
When does Jake judge me when I said that? Because I think we
Dartmouth
judged once. Did
and-
I say
oh,
that?
did he? Yeah, that's the first time. Did he judge you at this time?
No.
Oh well, he said he heard you say it yesterday. So.
I literally didn't. That's not true.
Weird.
Fake news.
What is Chris getting all rattled up about?
He's mad that we called him out for overusing his joke.
Look, we're not Harvard.
Which
The
joke?
Trump boot thing.
Oh.
No, I definitely overuse it. I
Chris
try
has,
not
like,
to. I try
many
not to use it
jokes.
against the same teams, right?
Okay, I need to pull this credit. Did you give an order?
I do. So the order will be the DA, advantage 2, advantage 1, states.
Midterms and 2.
T.
Thought about it.
That was a bold move.
It was a bold move. Alright.
Sure,
So we're good?
The 1 year drop that the trouble strike China and North Korea now. They drop that causes draws and global powers that cause a nuclear war. Eviscerates the Iran deal, which also causes Middle East escalation with Russia. All those are going to see nuclear escalation scenarios, and their prolific defense only says that there's been alarmism, but it's assumed the magnitude of our internally they would eviscerate NDT credibility because he'd pull out the Iran deal and freak out China because of North Korea and China attention so much that they would cause South Korea and Japan to proliferate, which our evidence says they can do easily, which erodes all international checks and causes arms races. Our erosion evidence also says there would be accidents, which and miscalculations and accidental launch, which cause extinction. Their impact defense has an answer that they dropped all of our turns case arguments except the close calls by turns the economy because Trump causing tension with all international actors would destroy global trade flows and make cooperation impossible. It escalates tariff wars. Lopez evidence says that this trade war he's already escalating now will kill consumption because it's going to cause retaliation, which will make the price of goods and services in the economy too high, which also is proven by history to cause global recessions. And green evidence that turns all international law. They said that diplomats being able to push the plan is important on the international stage, but our evidence simply answers that and says that he can. That diplomats can't do that when their president is racist and promoting things in the travel ban, drone restrictions, and saying that all media is fake news, etc. Turns Asian war, obviously, because he would start an escalation with China and North Korea. Nuclear, they also dropped the nuke war, which they didn't go for the environment impact. Sorry, the 1 year concedes that Dems went down, the wave is forming and concedes that Trump takes credit for the plan, which would actually boost his popularity and steal key Dem voters. This matters because we answered their healthcare key cards by saying that our DA was about Trump approvals. Our Salazar and Rothenberg union cards describe Trump's behavior as a key motivator of the Dem wave the plan. Let them change that perception and say the GOP, which means something outweighs all of the other issues I've talked about. We are the only ones with the card that cites voter preference. Our DC evidence says that healthcare is the single most important issue to voters in battleground states, ranks above gun control, immigration, the economy. The OC evidence is better than the 1 year card is about. The only one that analyzes competitive advantages in elections and says that voters are switching away from the GOP because of healthcare. So the plan lets them save face and swing the election. Yes, impeachment. The one to see French evidence says that Dems winning gives him greater power to prove that Trump is corrupt and Russian collaborator erode public opinion, make Trump a political liability for the party in 2020, which answers the one in our card. The one in our silver card says that even if they are pro-Trump now, if they got smacked in the midterms, they would change course and throw Trump over because they think Pence was their only chance in 2020 and their electoral liability. Dem House wins, triggers impeachment. Bowman in 131 in November when the House investigations could simply curtail the president's agenda, taking the Republican and into 2020 investigations, revealed no misdeed cards turnover, and makes impeachment possible. The Senate might invade the Republican Senate rooms and help them achieve the party goals of avoiding further losses. The Bolton card, what did we say there?
That was the one that we just got lucky.
The Cohen card says that the reason the impact has been triggered is because we just got lucky, but a number of different escalatory issues like us having missiles deployed in Russia, the Ukraine, or North Korea developing a missile test will cause instability in war. Now they dropped the card. The global governance advantage. One, there's an incentive to cooperate. The one Crossing said that they have incentive to cooperate in the face of diseases. The Peterson evidence also corroborates that because it would kill their economy and their entire population. China, India, Japan have huge economies and obviously bankroll their resources. They already have science linkages now, and the 1 year just says science linkages without any explanation. They would obviously be able to fund surveillance and have an incentive to, which is an argument that they dropped, so there would be no escalation. There's no impact to Asia war. The Arcana evidence says that there's international economic interdependence. China and India would know they would crush their economy if they just started going to war with states in Asia. And who's going to go to war? They just haven't given an actual scenario. The U.S. alliances in the region means that there won't be suicidal, and they know that it'd be horrible, but also only Trump's irrationality can trigger the impact by just striking them outright because he's a fucking idiot. No data proves any of this. They just assert that health matters for conflicts, but they have no example of a single country who has ever changed national security priorities because of health. They obviously have other concerns, like thinking that the U.S. is going to destroy them or that there's historical tensions and etc. It doesn't solve the midterms impact because Trump doesn't care about ILA, no disease impact. They drop those natural resilience. So even if there is a combination of high virulence and transmissibility, it's never happened before. One, their card doesn't say it will, just says it could. And also, there's people who have genetic variations that would block it. The York head says it would burn out because history proves it, and they just randomly say biotech. None of their evidence says that there's any motive or capability for any actor to use that biotech, so they can't win that argument. The ACA advantage, no impact to the economy. The clear evidence hits 109, and this is the data in the last 80 years. This says that it leads to threat deflation, cutting military expenditure so that you can boost money for the economy. And also, their website's zero data. It's all theoretical, so refer to the only piece of econ evidence that has data in the round. They can't just assert it's only 2/3 of rival dyads. Read the card. It's not the 08 evidence. He just said weakening something. There wasn't an answer to it. The Dresser evidence says that 08 proves that it actually leads to an increase in peace. They dropped the Jervis evidence. It says that there is theoretical reasons why there wouldn't be diversionary war because the public would oppose it because they would want domestic spending and they would see military spending as crashing the economy. That specifically answers their Trump argument because Trump's a fucking narcissist. So if his base didn't like it because they thought it was worse for the economy, he wouldn't do it. Also, the DA solves the Trump argument because we would impeach him if we win it. The state's counter plan dropped. They dropped that you can kick the counter plan if we lose it, which is an argument made of conditionality. So don't let them revive that in the 2 year because I'm going for this counter plan because they dropped the conditionality proves that you can kick it if we lose it. The Rubin card does not prove it links to the DA. It says says that they don't believe him when he takes credit for things that he didn't do, like the economy. The Fiorillo evidence does assume cooperation with the feds. It says that when the feds stepped in and did something after the states told them to do it, voters still gave credit to the states, which means it does assume the waivers. He couldn't take credit for the waivers because he's only pushed conservative things, not liberal ones, which means that it just wouldn't make any sense. It's not his idea, so voters want to give credit to him. At the very least, at least less, it does matter because there would be a lower probability that he can convince something to someone that he did it. 2C counterplans are good, otherwise it promotes sandbagging and 2C add-ons, and we can't answer the modeling argument. I'm not going for it. We're just going to say it solves the ACA advantage. 50 state fiat is good. At the very worst, it's not a reason to reject the team, kick the counterplan forwards, because we'll just keep going for states. There's no deterrence argument, and it's key to solve functional limits. The topic, even if the topic is small now, one, that's not true. Telemedicine, immigrants, repro justice, tons of people are making small asks. We need states as a functional limit on the topic, otherwise we lose every debate because there's no generic counterplan. It's just not one app. Also, even if it is, that means the states is a reason that it's holding back those asks by a functional limit. We do have a solid advocate. The Jackal evidence assumes 50 state uniformity, which is the argument they drop. There are real Fed keywords like ERISA and federal borrowing. We do and reject the argument, not the team. It's not. It doesn't force literature away because there's ERISA and federal law, which they dropped.
405.
405. We're starting when Chris gets it right.
Good to go.
Good.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I have, yeah. Yeah, sure. You should read all of this because this is important.
Someone said the string linked to my mom and she got mad at me for wearing headphones during the teams. She said, "You're being very rude to Jeffy."
You've all been aggressively swearing in this debate. It's fine. We're all adults here. Some of us older than others.
Thank you, sir.
We almost went through the whole debate though.
We haven't had an old person
Can't
do it.
let that happen.
They're like,
Pauline's got 6 minutes to do it.
We were saying
Old
we almost
person
went through the whole debate without making fun of
Nah,
the
I've got some jokes in mind. Okay, the order's going to be the global health governance advantage, the state's counter plan, the ACA advantage, and midterms. Okay. The impact to this advantage outweigh there's no counterplan that solves it, and none of their evidence is assumptive of the current tensions and climate of the status quo because it's old, which means that there's a really high risk of a South Asian war and disease spread. All we have to beat are the 2 and C rants on this advantage, and the 1AC evidence is far better to substantiate this. Probability should come first because it influences the capability, of the scenarios to escalate, and the probability that they'll escalate in the first place. Now, first is the Southeast Asian stability scenario goes nuclear. We have the most recent evidence that postdates theirs by 5 years and says there's tension and insecurity right now between countries in the region, which means that insecurity is the single factor that makes conflict likely. Insecurity and tensions mean instability is the last cycle in the risk turn that makes countries willing to escalate. We're approaching a threshold right now because diseases like SARS, HIV, etc. all impact those countries the most. Southeast Asia is the #1 country that faces is one of the #1 regions that faces the burden of neglected diseases, which means that those diseases are likely to cause a public collapse of infrastructure in the region and instability that make those countries willing to escalate. Cooperation does not solve this. Their evidence says diseases cause states to turn inward. Our Oslo evidence impact turns this and says that when Asian countries turn inward, it means that it creates rally around the flag effects particular to those countries, which means none of their diversionary defense on the other page applies, and they did not cross-apply it, which means they don't get to make that argument and you don't get to evaluate it, but it says that that causes those states to do more aggressive posturing and causes those states to escalate in the region. It's not just about China. Our evidence cites things like Singapore, Thailand, etc., Malaysia, and all of those states are uniquely unlikely to cooperate. Their evidence is also not specific to the Asian region, which means you should prefer analysis. Second impact is that diseases cause extinction. New disease strains and the combination of diseases prove that there's a massive amount of diseases. This isn't about a single one, which means that the public infrastructure would just be totally swamped, and all of their historical examples are just about singular diseases. Also, the combination of lethality and virulence and the collapse of public and the inability of the international order to get its shit together means that, absent the plan, means that there wouldn't be any effective response, which creates a unique propensity to escalate. The historical analogies are wrong because the Black Death, the flu killed, influenza in the 1900s, it killed millions, and there have been diseases that have been able to achieve a high rate that have killed entire populations. Even if it doesn't cause total extinction, it's more probable because there's always a scenario in the international arena where conflicts are de-escalated because of things like interdependence, which only the plan's internal links, which only our internal links break down, but theirs don't. The state's counterplan, we are not extending arguments on this because they said explicitly that we are only using it to solve the ACA advantage and that the states don't solve modeling the ACA advantage. We're not going for it. We'll concede their impact defense. The midterms just said first is that the impact of this dissent is really silly and empirically denied. Trump may seem scary, but ultimately he's a toddler. When you give him an iPad, he just tweets and he's relatively contained, which means he's not that frightening. He's maintained a fundamentally stable foreign policy and won't change the basis of our approach to either. The Waltz evidence says our approach to the Middle East hasn't changed at all, which just proves their Iran deal internal link. Second is Trump is all talk and no action. He's talked about blowing up the Iran deal and never did, and talked about invading North Korea but never actually did because there are structural and institutional constraints on the president like Congress and the rest of the executive branch, which means we didn't just get lucky, and the fact that there hasn't been anything happening for 2 years proves they're wrong. There's no impact to Bolton. Their Saunders evidence says no one takes him seriously because they all realize that he's crazy. Half from the Bush administration also says the exact same structural constraints on conflict that checked Trump will also check Bolton because he won't be able to overrule Congress. Now, that means that they don't have to access their Turns case analysis because all of the Turns case analysis is predicated on winning, that there's some possibility for the impact. If we win the impact debate or win some mitigation of it, then that implicates that there's also no impact of proliferation. The Mueller evidence the states use nukes judicially based on posturing because they want to stoke their egos and become a part of the nuclear club rather than using them for aggression. Even the worst nuclear states haven't gotten involved in conflict proven by India and Pakistan. This also just proves their miscalculated accidental launches argument because no nuclear state has literally ever miscalculated accidentally launched. The Rosen evidence is theoretical and speculates about the potential for miscalculation, but the Mueller evidence is way more empirical. All of our impact arguments also prove that. That doesn't turn the case. This was the one-year answer to Trump's case. The green evidence they read says drone strikes are the reason that Trump is better. Walt's evidence says this takes this out by saying that Obama also did drone strikes and he was also able to internationally engage, which proves there's no trade-off in that the health norms are internationally stable because Trump is viewing them as a smart business opportunity, which means we all are the only ones reading evidence about global health and international engagement. Also, they have to win that the nuclear war to win their disease scenario, which means that any risk that diseases are spreading right now obviously means that we win, that they're more sure turn, that the dissent doesn't turn the case, or that they'd be locked in because there'd be a spread of virulent diseases that would be super large because of things like globalization. Now, the other issues are key to the midterms. Parties get people to vote and turn out by capitalizing on valence, the polarizing and emotional nature of an issue. The Democratic Party has 6 issues which trigger extreme voter valence that will mobilize Dems and independents to turn out against the GOP: income inequality, poverty, gun control, corporate power, race relations, and healthcare. Despite voter report, the net valence of every of those other issues is greater than healthcare, which means the 2&C argument, the one in our argument where they're like, no, healthcare is the most important one. We have read a chart that lists the percentage of valence, and healthcare is at the bottom. People are bad at rationalizing their behavior, so it's all about what gets them to turn out, and it's what gets them angry, and all of those other issues matter more. Even if healthcare was something the GOP would be able to capitalize on, all of their arguments about why Trump is so rational and that have a fundamental tension with their ability that Trump would be able to capitalize on that effectively. Now, especially this is true in battleground states where healthcare is not a priority in the most competitive elections. People cite the economy as the component. Own evidence says that healthcare is a issue that is important, but not that it's the only top issue, and that there are 3 other issues. Now, there's also no impeachment. It's impossible, even with the vast midterms drought. Senate and Dems in the Senate would have to get 50 Republicans on board. Even a quid pro quo and clear evidence of collusion will not be enough because they will go down swinging Trump, but the standard of collusion will also have to be much higher. That's the ample evidence. The impeachment proceedings are not enough to constrain the Trump agenda because their evidence just says the word agenda, but foreign policy would be the one area where Trump would be relatively unconstrained. They didn't extend the argument that the midterm win caused the public option, but our evidence says that political barriers in all of 09 proves that they wouldn't have.
One our card says if they lost the midterms, they would play more to their base by not
Yeah,
engaging.
if they lost the midterms, Republicans would only play more to their base because they wouldn't want to risk alienating that base anymore, given the losses that they have endured in the midterm elections, which means only we have calculus about how that impacts Trump.
We'd be on the president.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
It's we loaded everything, so including the states. So something take those out.
that is the two. I put that. Yeah, I put that. So.
We're gonna go second.
Moment in the 2AR was a really good opportunity for another joke.
Gomez knows because he was there.
Just ask Gomez. He was lucky to survive.
That would have been amazing.
So whenever there's like a massive gap, that's where you can predict.
To both teams on just being yet another good debate against each other and providing us judge a policy debate. The decision is a 2-1 for the affirmative from Northwestern.
I sat. I thought the risk of the decide was, well, actually, I think both teams won a large risk of their arguments, but I think that purely came down on the impact question. I think that they ultimately get to like a lot of big nuclear impact with their like arms racing impact. And like I'm just thinking, like you win some South Asian conflicts, but I'm not sure how big that is. And I think your terminal impact is just like it causes invasions in other countries, but like I'm not sure how that terminally escalates to nuclear. And I think that their like proliferation argument was more significant. I think that on the internal link level, I think you were doing pretty well. I think that your evidence was like good on kind of beating the Twitter rant about like uniqueness about multilateral cooperation, or like why wouldn't they do it inevitably. I think that the better defense that you might want to say is just more like feasibility of cooperation. I think that their evidence was like a lot more aspirational. It just said that we need to start surveillance, but like I'm not sure about what exactly that means. Like, does it mean that like Vietnam starts sharing data with China? Like all of these like questions related to like how does it actually work in the real level? I think that might be a better defense, but rather than the argument that you chose. I think that their alliance argument kind of caps the impact. Like I understand that it doesn't really apply to small states in Southeast Asia, but I think that it does prevent conflict from getting super large. I think if the alliance checks like, you know, Chinese escalation, then I think that maybe just like a small border conflict in Southeast Asia, so it doesn't really have a terminal impact. And maybe like that is like a little bit intervening because like the Twitter really doesn't make an explicit magnitude argument, but like I think the probability framing is also kind of new in the Twitter, so I feel okay about making the assessment that the impact that you want is not really big. And with the disease stuff, I think that your 1AC evidence was like okay, but I think that they had just a slew of cards that said that, you know, burnout, genetic variability kind of made me question whether that strain will actually happen. I think if you had you outline like specific strains that cause escalation, I think that might be better, but I think that they just had cards that defend that. And I was thinking a little bit about diversionary war stuff from Jervis. I think that you need to make a little bit more explicit Twitter cross application to make it viable, because the Twitter was like, we're not going to go for economy, but I'm thinking maybe like some of those cards could answer their arguments about border invasion. I think that your arguments about turning inward didn't make sense with your terminal impact that you're reading, because like the terminal impact card is about like when states cannot get their stuff together, then they'll start to like invade other countries, but then they have cards that are like, they will not do that, they'll just turn inward. Like I understand your arguments about interdependence, but like I just like didn't know what the scenario for escalation was if the states are all focusing on inward rather than try to invade outward. I thought that when they were making cooperation argument, I think Twitter should have also said that cooperation framework fails in the absence of right to health, so there's nothing that people could cooperate out of. So I thought that could have been like another internal link arguments that you could have made. So I think that, you know, like reasonably okay risk, but I think that impact is not that big. And on the midterms, like I said, I think the proliferation stuff outweighed, and I think that your impact defense is like better, like good on, like Trump didn't really change anything in, like in terms of foreign policy changes, but I think that their arguments are more based on the perception and the strength of our alliances. So, and then I think that one area and the two area really don't answer like Korea, Japan proliferating. So I thought that your Mueller card was about empirics, but obviously did not assume future proliferators from getting the weapons. So I thought that caused significant instability, that caused escalation. And I think maybe on the turns case stuff, maybe I am incorrect and maybe I just missed this, but I don't really have one AR extending the health norm arguments. I thought like the green card definitely is not about, you know, the plan, but I think that they said it turns international law, but I don't think one AR answered it. And I think all of the Twitter arguments about why Trump would, you know, it's like why it's business strategy, I thought all of those arguments were new. So I think that if they want a reasonably okay risk of the side, I was just willing to say that, you know, it turns the F. I think where it gets close, it's like the healthcare key argument. I thought your evidence was like good on like voter preferences and like the Kaiser poll stuff, but I think that what breaks the tie is that the Twitter has this argument. It's about like arguments about approval rating. So I think there are two cards about Trump popularity I don't think you necessarily answered. So while I agree that there are other issues that could be important, I feel like if the plan is like a watershed moment for Trump, so then he can capitalize, and I thought that massively boosted popularity, so maybe that is able to overcome other factors that might be relevant. So like people might be thinking about other issues, but I think that if Trump is able to capitalize on the plan, then I think it definitely has some chance that Trump could get the voters to turn out. And I thought their evidence on healthcare and public option were like very, very good. So I thought that, and they also had some cards about like, healthcare does matter even though other issues exist, and I thought their defense on that was okay. And on the impeachment debate, I think that the GOP losing kind of changes the calculus on impeachment. I thought their evidence was good on it creates more demand as well as more basis for the impeachment. So I thought that that answered kind of like your standard of collusion stuff. And I thought when you were saying that like the people will placate to the base, I thought their Pence argument was like, yeah, that's how they placate to the base, by sticking to the Pence. So I thought that they had evidence that was in your arguments. And I thought there was like also a little bit of a tension between your arguments on like impeachment to the rest of the impact, because you're kind of like, oh, foreign policy is kind of unconstrained, so Trump has latitude to say like, I'm not really doing anything wrong with like Russia or whatever. But then I think that also takes out your impact argument, because then if Trump is not constrained with foreign policy, then there was a risk that he would cause more tensions with other countries. So I thought that there was like a little bit of tension between those two, but it obviously didn't matter. But I think that maybe you might want to phrase it differently in future debates.
I thought that the app went up pretty good risk of the norms advantage, but I think the impact is pretty meh. I'm generally not a fan of extinction level impacts, and I think the NAG did a good job of pointing that out, but that doesn't deny that global pandemics still couldn't kill millions of people, which I think is still a bad idea. I think that you've got good terminal D on just like South Asia escalating to involve China and whatnot. That doesn't deny that there might be some war featuring the Philippines and Malaysia. I don't know what that war is, but it's a war that's bad. And so high probability of meh impact from the AF. And I just kind of thought that the risk of the DA was pretty low. I explained all of it in my RFD to you, and it just thought it was kind of a combination of death with 1,000 cuts. I think that, Young Kwan is right that I think the AF is a win for Trump, but I don't think that your ed is good enough to rise to the level to answer what I thought were pretty good presses on the link level by the AF on just like other issues are more important, and I don't really know why the boost in popularity that you provide Trump outweighs the other issues like gun control, economic inequality, et cetera, that are currently motivating Democrats to turn out to win those elections in 2018. I also just kind of thought that the Negev wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, and I thought the AFAB was a little bit better than I thought it was going to be on the impact questions of yes, removal, no removal, and yes, Trump will act cray-cray versus yes, Trump says cray-cray but isn't cray-cray. And I just kind of thought that in multiple places their ev was newer than yours on some of those questions, which did filter my reading of a little bit. But I also just kind of thought that, healthcare is an issue among many, but not enough to swing the election for Republicans to maintain control. I do not think that you win that Trump gets convicted, but you do win that it's impeachment, but I don't think that your evidence says that impeachment is sufficient to constrain his foreign policy actions. And I kind of thought that the AF-EV on Bolton ain't a thing, Trump says one thing, but it's actually fairly squo. And because my reading of your neg-ev was more like, these are all the things that could go wrong, and if they did, it'd be real bad. I thought, the AF-EV was just more on the side of F quality and truth on, there's a lot of bluster going on, but I can't confidently say that in a world in which the GOP maintains control and Trump remains president, that all of the hotspots that your EV talks about would escalate, and so you have trouble, if you can't remove Trump, and if the odds of removal are really, really low, which is what I thought, you can't access the case in a short-term way. You can't access existential impacts that would outweigh the probability of a smaller impact on the case. And so just like really, really low risk of the midterms DA that was outweighed by a higher risk of a man impact public health advantage.
Yeah, my decision is similar in a lot of ways, though it differs in a couple places. I think that there's a very low risk of disadvantage, but I think it outweighs a very low risk of the DA. And that sucks because in my heart, I definitely believe that any chance of getting Trump out of office is more important than whatever the app is talking about. And I fundamentally believe you're on the side of truth on several of the issues. But I don't think the the negative ballot that I went through in my head, I didn't think had enough fidelity to kind of what happened in the debate. I think that the AF is winning just enough of the disease stuff to outweigh the DA, which I think is lowered mostly by a combination of the arguments. So I don't think that any of the singular defensive arguments is 100% takeout, but that the combination makes me skeptical that the AF definitively makes the difference in the Dem wave and whether that wave succeeds in removing Trump from office. I also thought the F impact assessment was a little bit better calibrated than you all's in this particular debate. It's sort of strange to me that the 2NR impact comparison is focused on great power wars among nuclear armed countries based on things like prolif and missile defense in Ukraine, partly because they read prolif impact defense in the 1AR and you didn't really call it out, and partly because I don't think that's the strength of the scenario. And this gets a little bit to what Hayes was talking about, which is that their cards are pretty good on Trump constrained, but I think that your response to that should be it doesn't matter, because it's about international responses to Trump as much as anything else. Sure, fine, maybe he won't himself first strike, but the miscalculation and the accidents become incredibly likely. And so, I'm not saying that that's not in the 2NR, but that I think that you want to kind of shift a little bit to the just sort of the global conflict likelihood is so much higher with Trump in office, and then that outweighs, any chance of those things happening outweighs the stuff that the AF is going for. So the disad stuff, I think Hayes mostly covered, or Hayes and Young, I guess, mostly covered the kind of cut that they're making on the link level. I didn't think this cut was huge, but I did think it was there. And then the impeachment stuff, I think that this, the 15 vote threshold in the Senate really makes it tough to win removal, and each side has a story for why the wave will or won't change the GOP's political calculations, but it has to be so many GOP senators that I think that the AF sort of has an advantage in that world, because it's every single senator has to make that, or not every single, but 15 of these senators have to make that same calculation. I think makes it a little difficult, and I've heard you all in other debates have the solid 2NR story that's just here's why this happens. This is much more likely than the reverse of just kind of sticking it out, sticking to Trump forever, and thinking that the damage is already done, which I thought was an okay warrant by the half. And so your cards are decent, but they're ultimately very speculative, which is why I think this argument works best when you have sort of the time to spin the narrative in the 2NR, which kind of gets to something that I wanted to say about the strategy. I think the sort of two things about this. One is that the block investment in states really troubles the 2NR in terms of case coverage, inevitably. And that sort of starts in the 1NC. You have these two DAs that get such minimal 2AC attention, but you're still same strategy anyway, which is fine. But it seems to me like more case coverage in the 1NC would get you a higher ROI on we're going to win, that these advantages aren't a thing, and I just think that having some block time that is taken from maybe less time on states based on something that 2AC has to answer. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but I just think it's easier for the AF to blow off a DA that they're quite certain you're not going for than it is to blow off a bunch of case D.
I personally thought a 2NR read just went for DA case. It would have been okay. I mean, given how tiny we think that this disease advantage impact is, a 2NR with an impact framing of just yeah, it's low risk, but there's only a risk, and the impact is real big.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
a series of comparisons like that, I think you crush. And so the time
that might free up enough time too, given what we did on states, to maybe free up the 10 to 15 to 20 seconds on midterms to maybe win a little bit more risk or the impact outcome on them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only correction to well, I'm ride or die states because we're UNLV, so what do I do? Right? Well, it might just be well, I wasn't the 2NC, but not in the 2NR. I think that, I don't know, I could see a world in which the 2NR DA case with the small risk of huge outweighs big risk of little. I don't know. That probably is a better approach.
Yeah, I think that's
given
right.
what happened.
So for you, Michaela, the biggest cut against the DA is the no impeachment stuff. Is that right? Is that an evidence thing, or is it just we need better 2NR spin?
Combo.
Okay. And your problem with our evidence is it's too speculative.
Yeah,
So-
it's like this is the way the GOP could react, and if that happens, that gets them out of office. It doesn't say.
So if there's better, longer 2 hours spent on this, are we still going to lose a huge cut on it because of the evidence quality? That's going to make it really low.
With me, I just like their evidence from 2018 is fairly definitive, and it does more math than yours does in terms of how the Senate would flip, and that's like a really high burden for you to overcome. In my
So
opinion.
we need a card that says that's from 2018 that says what? Like answers their
Why
senators.
17 senators would switch in the Senate to remove Trump? Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
At least for me. I mean, that's what your DA requires, absent you having.
I guess I
had
just
that
don't
one.
understand why the recency matters in this particular argument, because we're making a theoretical argument about if the midterms were really bad for Republicans, it would give them a huge incentive to oust Trump because he'd be an electoral liability. I just don't understand why recency really matters.
Well,
for that
in a
theoretical
close debate where you
statement.
have competing claims, you rely on us to make determinations of what matters.
So, I mean, can we debate better on recency doesn't matter? I mean, that wasn't an argument they made, though.
Sure,
This is
that's
my
still doesn't resolve
frustration.
the like, I don't get how you get to 67 votes to remove claim.
Well, I mean, we made an arg that's like, we read a card about it, that's like they have a huge incentive to get Pence in because he's a lot better for their chances in 2020.
Like
they got
who?
smacked in the midterms. Republicans in the Senate.
Everyone.
Not all of them, but we only need 17. There's
Okay, but you haven't
51 in the Senate. I mean, we read a card about I just don't understand how they get such huge of a cut on that when they don't have a card that answers our warrant, which is that electoral
Sure they do.
liability.
It's just like in no world does that math ever make sense.
Well,
And they
I
have
do
to
think-
like
doesn't
the
answer
base
a
gives them
warrant.
incentive not to ditch Trump.
I do think their card answers your warrant. I don't think it's great, but the card that says like that was the damage already done kind of thing that I was referring to. That's
Okay.
like they've already
Okay.
lost, right? They just had a shitty election.
Okay. So
I think you can.
It's the 1AR code.
It's not great.
Yeah, no.
You can, this is why I was saying too in our spin. Like I think
Yeah.
that you're
Yeah.
going to be okay with this evidence. To me, I think you're probably okay with this evidence set with some more like this is why we think we are correct.
okay.
Maybe there's like a line in the silver card when it's talking about like easiest scenario for Trump to remove. Like I think part of that card talks about the numbers when it's like enough Republicans decide that Pence gives them better shot to avoid annihilation in 2020. So I think you could use that line more effectively. And I guess the reason why I concluded the other way is that I think that their evidence was just like purely talking about the numbers, but I thought that your evidence was like okay on it's not just about like the numbers game. Maybe there are like more evidence that could come out that could change the basis for impeachment. So I think you could push that a little bit more. Be like, yeah, it's not just about like the numbers. It's about like the environment in the Congress. Like what happens if there are all of these other evidence that are just like not defensible? Like then like impeachment must be an inevitable option.
I mean, personally with me, I think the path of least resistance is to find out that says impeachment alone is enough to constrain Trump FOPO. Like, then it would be a huge slap in the face, and he would just be like, oh shit. Like, I can't do the cray-cray because now my buddies that enable me have impeached me. That, for me at least, is a easier path to win than...
Or maybe a card says he'd resign if he got impeached.
Oh yeah, no, I love the resign argument.
Okay.
I think it's
those are-
unfortunately
and
not
that's
true,
much better
but-
than the like
Because then we have two different.
Yeah, exactly. If you
outs.
have another angle, I think
Yeah.
that helps a lot.
For sure.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Really good thing.
I have a quick question. So I think a lot of us intuitively believe Trump is bad, and the impact cards are pretty good for that. So do you think that like the big impact, even if it's a low risk of the DA ballot, is kind of scary for the app? Do you think that the path of least resistance is to continue fighting the fight on the impact D, or do you think it's about just like really getting the risk of the DA so low that even like a big impact is not good, or should we?
I think it has to be a combo. So like, not to be like you have to win everything, but I think that the really hard push on removal is pretty necessary, and I think that as I think we all said, like your cards on the constraint to his foreign policy are like pretty decent. I think that you gotta have both.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, that's an argument for like the death by 1,000 cut strategy versus like the sitting on like one or two arguments in the two-hour strategy. Like,
Yeah, I mean, with me, like, I kind of think the link is probably good enough. If you're real good on, like, wrong person who gets blamed, or, like, Trump's approval rating has increased substantially over the last few months, therefore, like, no threshold for what's necessary for him to win. I like that approach. But, you know, in this debate, you know, like Michaela, the death of 1,000 cuts is what got your, the DA risk real low. And so if you've got the time to do that, I definitely think that's probably the safest path to choose.
Or maybe just, I don't know, beef up your impact in the money you see. Like, I'm not sure why there's like no
And just
SL
like being an actual
yeah.
terminal
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that would make it much easier.
Yeah.
Combination much easier. Yeah.
And like there's one about Indo-Pacific, there's some impact floating out there that's just like Southeast Asia, approximate cause of superpower escalation, nuclear, blah. You know, I think you've even read it before, maybe like with the tourism advantage. I think you may have actually read a second part that actually got to something
Yeah.
there. But yeah, something that is a real.
Remember.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally
Well, thanks.
Pretty good.
Thank you. Good luck.